Oh, we're going with the outro first, okay?
Yeah, let's just go outro and into the stream.
We don't have a choice. And Dave, you're going to want to turn that down.
I will be.
Hey, everybody. Mauricio, you want to bring us into the show?
And he just dropped off.
Hey, everybody. It's me, Indian Star. Are you back, Mauricio?
Oh, yeah, I'm back. I'm just looking at it seems that we started with the outro instead of the intro there. So, but yeah, welcome to episode 73 here. And yeah, it's going to be a good show. We got Indian Star here. I'll pass it along to you.
Hey, everybody. It's me again. We actually have a whole new set of commentators for you. We have Philakid, we have Dave, and of course, we have Thomas. We chose to change it up a little bit, keep you guys on your toes, see if you would even notice that the outro was there. Hopefully, you all did notice. But yeah, I will hand it over to Dave.
And thanks for being here on a lovely Saturday, everybody. And hope you hang along. We have just about 600 pictures to look at. And I will pass it over to Philly.
Good afternoon, everybody. New face to the crowd on this channel. I'm glad to be working with everybody here and looking forward to having an exciting afternoon.
And Thomas?
Thomas.
I'll jump in. Welcome to the 1920s, where we go through and do the credits first. Because that's basically what we did. But it'll be interesting. We've kind of changed things up today in more than one way, so it'll be interesting. Would like to see your reaction as well on how you guys like this. Because depending on how you like it, we will either continue doing it or never do it again. We'll see here. But let's start off with our first favorite, Massey's. So this is the old view. This is kind of what we're going to be changing up here. Is we're going to do a little bit of an A/B test. Actually, it should have been this one first, but that's fine. So we've got an A/B test. This is going to be the old pictures compared to the new pictures on a few of these. And then we'll basically do the normal rundown, and we can actually zoom in on different places. And I'm just trying to align them on the fly occasionally. Hopefully that's not too much of an issue. But this is the quick before and after. So everything that's in the sepia tones, again, we're back to the 1920s. Actually, even later than that for sepia, but it's just an interesting comparison between the two sites, because you can see there is a lot of changes, especially in here. So it's just kind of the first views, but there is changes here, just everywhere. So first off, we've got this concrete pad that's appeared right in this location. And it appears that it will be for additional tanks. So it might be that they are going to be using these tanks. We kind of suspected they might be used for the launch site, but now the question is, are they going to be bringing them back down and using them here instead? What is your thoughts on that, Philakid, Dave?
Well, the tanks seem to fit, and that's the way they set up the general pad configuration. So at least that portion of it looks correct. And also, there's also the additional ball tank that's just arrived at the bottom there too. So they got to find a home for it also.
Yep, I had that queued up just to talk about here. Not only the ball tank, but we've had these for a little while now. Would expect them to actually probably go right here for the sphere tank right there, and then I'm thinking the two other gas vaporizers might fit right here. And actually, these lines right here are actually new as well. I don't believe they were there last week. So if you look right here, they just are not there at all. have to kind of jump around a little bit there. But the other part that we noticed is this location in here. They've gone through and flattened out all the material. I guess I ruined my A/B test because I've moved it around a bit, but this should still work. So there's that location. They've already basically taken all this gravel, leveled it out. It looked like they were setting this gravel up before in order to do a test with Ship 25, and they did a full cryo test. So there was a bit going on there. I haven't seen too much else that was huge difference on the ship itself. We can go through and look at that a little bit. But one of the areas that kind of jumps out as well, it's same thing with the cryo tanks that we're expecting right here. There is additional, looks like valve assemblies right here, as well as a whole slew of cable racks, or not cable, just racks for all the pipe racks right here. So that's going to be a bit of an interesting question of like how this is going to be set up, if it's going to be set up for something over here, or if it's going to be for that booster cryo station that we've been expecting that they'll eventually get to. And I just noticed also something a little bit different right in here. I did not see this before when I was going through and reviewing these photos yesterday and the day before. Is there's a trench back here in this section. All right, I'll try not to move around too much here because there's a bit of pixelization. Sorry, that's on my end. I hope that helps. So that trench right here is a little bit new. I'm going to zoom out again. We've got another trench up here.
That's a new trench that we're guessing might be electrical because it's so narrow and runs sort of between the different tank valve areas.
Yeah, I would think it's electrical and or data. It kind of goes towards this telecom hut a little bit, but it's more likely the valve assembly in this direction here. Another big change is this basically cryo station was not just going to be a cryo station, or this is really the cryo station. This will also be a puck shucker over here. So maybe this is also what they are routing towards. So we might have another ship quick disconnect system that gets put over here as well. Might be with these lines, but I'm hoping we'll see that booster pad. There isn't any activity here. I mean, this is one of the pieces that should be connected to it. So that's the actual rebar sticking up for this one position. Philakid, why would they go through and do that as far as the rebar? Is that for location purposes, or is that something else, do you think?
Yeah, they might have. It appears that they've got reg caps on the rebar that's sticking up for safety purposes, but they might have just left one set of rebar high so that they don't have to. They can use it as a benchmark to determine where the other ones are. Because once you know where one is, you can locate all the others very quickly. And that's my only thought on that. Because otherwise well, again, remember on the OLIT, they buried all the rebar and then they dug it up one by one. And so for months, a couple of months on end, you couldn't see any of the rebar for the OLIT. It just seems to be that way. They're doing it so that it doesn't obstruct their construction of what's going on behind. And I think you noticed also that they had done some additional grading up to the left behind here also, correct?
Yeah, there is some not issues, but some interesting changes that are going on over here. So they have this burst tank right here. That's going to be 6.1. It literally was booster 6, and then they decided to scrap booster 6 for a test tank or a couple of test articles. And they've actually gone through and removed a bunch of the soil right here. So there is these HESCO barriers along in here. And then we actually have something quite special going on right in here. It is this little, basically, utility system. And according to the maps that we've seen, it should connect from right here to right here. So there's electrical and data connections right there. And then there was another view. I probably skipped it here. It's this one right here, I think. That has another interesting element. Looks like a couple of camera cases. So we've been looking at it, I think, through Raptor Roost for the past few days, just waiting for a test to appear. It might be one of those things where it just suddenly bursts open and we're like, oh my gosh, there's water everywhere. And you get like 10 seconds of it, because that's about what you would see, at least from Raptor Roost.
Yeah, and again, a split tank in this case isn't going to throw the water very high in the air. It's pretty much just going to pop out on the ground and probably not get as explosive as a 10 or 15 bar gas test, correct?
Yeah, like a cryo test. And I'm still hoping that they will do a cryogenic burst test, but with a little bit more of a boom. And they would actually use this outlet right here, I believe, to connect it over, but they'd have to use the flex lines that are intended to use like for cryogenics. And they put like, I don't know, a few 2x4s on the ground just to keep it off the ground. So it just isolates it thermally a little bit. And the idea, at least for a test tank like this, or what I'm thinking about, is it would be a great idea to test the FTS system on a dummy article. Maybe even this one, but this type of flex line, it's not appropriate for it. This is just for a water hose. But anyways, it was just an idea that if they put on the a flight termination system, so some shaped charged plastic explosives, you would have a great ability to test that tank or a tank like it at this burst pad, so that you can verify, yep, it works. It doesn't just pop a hole in it. It rips the whole thing, seams and all. That's the general test that you want to get to. But that's not quite necessary, but based off what we saw with Ship 24 and Booster 7, I kind of feel like it might be. Dave, what was your opinion on the flight termination system when you heard about that for 7 and 24?
I mean, I think it was just not big enough. It's too massive a rocket for the size FTS they had, and they need to be more destructive. It was an amazingly robust system. It kept engines burning and everything, even with a probably 3 or 4 foot diameter hole in the middle of each tank.
Yeah, that was the craziest part about it. You were there live watching it, weren't you?
Well, where we were at, we lost it 30 seconds after launch because it went into the clouds from the point of view of everybody along Tarpon Bend. So they actually had a better view on South Padre, but it was all we could hear was the crackle for minutes.
That's the scariest part about that. I've seen 15 go up into the clouds and then never to be seen until it basically landed or came out of the clouds and then landed. And I didn't even see the kickflip or anything like that. Nobody did. The clouds were pretty thick that day. Only the people watching live were able to see on the live stream from SpaceX any of those motions.
Yeah, I mean, it looked like the cloud layer was between the launch site and Raptor Roost and the outpost. So if you were to the north up at SPI, you actually looked over it and you got a good shot of it coming through the clouds and above it. So one advantage of not being as close is you actually had a better view. I'm going to take a short break here. We've had a bunch of donations and other things happening since the stream, actually just before the stream started. While I'm here, Jim Cavett, thank you for gifting a membership to somebody. And Jim says, I love the membership perks. Thanks to RGV and the team. Barry Wood gifted another membership just as the stream was about to start. And then JK Video, thank you, $50 donation. And then Sharpie, keep up the good work, RGV, for another $10. And John Dopker for another $10, and John gifted another RGV membership. And Jim Cavett gifted a membership, and Chris Lyons gifted 5 memberships. We're off to a start today.
Wow, awesome. Thank you, everybody, for all those donations and even the gifted memberships. Those are huge. I've just noticed something now that is probably just quite super obvious, but there's this concrete pad right here going this way with the pipe racks that are visible even on the last flyover from the April 30th. So that's the kind of the comparison of the two. And so those concrete pads, I think, are still here. They're just buried up in dirt that's just been driven over or something. But the racks are basically parallel to that, and I'm wondering if what's going to happen is it's just going to continue off of this path, go straight over, and then either take a left turn going up this way, or might continue this way. But I'm thinking it'll end up probably going this way right here, just based off of that little concrete path that you could see before.
Well, I wonder if they're going to be running cryo over to the nose cone jail area and the puck checking area.
Well, they already have it at the at least on this one, but yeah, the nose cone would be interesting if they had gaseous pressurization, and maybe that's what they're doing here. But that looks like conduit. Now I'm looking at it.
Well, I'm wondering if they might replace the nose cone jail with something else and need another cryo feed over in that general area.
Good point. Speaking of which, we'll look at a couple of photos here. I just need to get into some ground shots, and then I'll move on directly from there. So we've got that test tank that we just went past, so we haven't seen any action from it. But Ship 25, it did its cryo test recently. I didn't really see anything changing on the vehicle itself, but it is interesting to look at like all of the hookups and everything else. But I did go through and just look at it as far as the details, no dings or dents or other issues. But this vehicle is pretty much, I think, toast as far as payloads go. That's been welded shut on the payload bay door. And it's pretty much just like Ship 24. And I think they might want to change it out and do something a little bit different. The next 2 flights, according to the first SpaceX reports, were that they were going to be without flaps, or basically tiles. And then Elon changed his mind and said that they will find out. And I think it was a week from today, we'll find out the answer if Ship like 25, which I don't think that's the case, but it might be Ship 28 or something, will be the next one to fly, or if it's 27 or 26. Like there's still an option of any of those.
Well, here's a question. We have a upcoming intermittent road closure at midnight tomorrow night, Monday night. Do we think this might be moving?
There's a good chance that it moves or something else moves a different direction. So Ship 26 has a chance of being able to be moved to the launch site, do some static fires at test stand B. I would love to see that direction. But this could also be the object moving, or they could even do 2 moves at the same time.
Yeah, they've got a 4-hour window, so lots of opportunity there.
Yeah. And Philkid, does this look a lot very familiar to you?
Remembrances of SN15. There was one of those sitting on right beside Pad A, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, nose cone 12. This is nose cone 31, and it does kind of show they've moved and progressed quite a bit, and they pretty much built most of those nose cones, which is kind of surprising, at least to some level. But yeah, this one's a lot more damaged than the nose cone 12, and it's still interesting to look at. And I also did look around at these locations to see if there's anything else that was tested or pushed to its limits, and I don't really see much. Like this side, there's a little bit of a bend right here, but that is not because of the vehicle. It's just the plate is going down, and it's like, oh, and it's like, no, wait, that's normal. because everything else is pretty smooth, as you can see on the shadow and the rest of the lines. Otherwise, you would see this massive change. But anyways, that was one of those details that I was just wanting to look for and didn't really see anything change there. So they're pretty much done, I think, with the testing on that.
And it's been a busy little chat here. We've got a whole bunch more membership donations. 55 Chevy Guy Steve just donated 5 memberships, followed by Rocket Prophet, who gifted 5 more RGV photography memberships, followed by Jake Winslow, who gifted 5 more RGV aerial photography memberships.
15, wow.
I think we're up to close to 25 already in this stream.
Oh my gosh.
Quick interruption here. We did get a $10 donation through PayPal from Crane Man. He says, "Go RGV team, greetings." Thank you so much, Crane Man. And we did have a question here come through from John Doppker. So this payload door slit, pretty much scrapped idea. Any ideas what could be the new design for it?
Well, I think the design itself is very similar still to this one, but one thing that you should look at is this direction right here. It's a lot more of a change on ship 26, for instance, or above. It's a rounded arc instead of this harder corner, so that's a change. But the rest of it, it's pretty much the fact that it's 16 or even up to 20 millimeters of stainless steel in places. So pretty much where the door is at, I would count it as just this little seam on 26 as that 20 millimeters. But it's mostly just 16 millimeters, and you'll see multiple plates. So this one, and I guess I could skip ahead a little bit if you want to just answer that question directly.
I mean, by the time we get to ship 27, the full door is there with Pez dispenser and everything. So it hasn't gone away. It's just these early ones, they decided they needed to redesign the internals and the bracing, and so they welded over the door just as an interim solution.
Yep. There was one in here that was perfectly usable.
Actually, right there. The second one. No, next one, that one. Down.
Oh, there it is. Yeah, I just couldn't find it exactly, and you can see the multiple levels of steel on this one. I believe it was probably ship 26 or 7 that I was thinking of directly, but you can see the arc right here. It's a lot more of a gradual slope and arc that structurally just with nature is better. I mean, if you remember Star Trek: The Next Generation, for instance, they used curves because they on the ships because the curves will reduce stresses and it's a more natural flow. And it just kind of makes it look cooler, I think, to do this. So there's still quite a bit of a change over on this side as well as this side, but it's not nearly as much as it was on this article. Like you can see that massive corner difference, and then the other side of it is you've got plate on top of plate and top of plate. So that's all on top of the 4 millimeters. So this is I would assume each one is about 4 millimeters in thickness, but it might not be. It could be thinner or thicker depending on their needs. But in general, if it's each one is 4 millimeters, that's going to be 4, 8, 16 to 20 right in here. That's going to be the interesting area if this is 4 millimeters as well. But anyways, that's really thick. That's a lot of strength that you're putting around the door. If you think about it in another sense, that brings it to just the common everyday, like a door jamb, there'll be quite a bit of support and structure on the outside and on the header. That's why if you have an earthquake or other natural disaster, a door jamb is actually one of the safer places to be, because structurally it's going to be a bit stronger than the rest of the structure surrounding it.
Notice how high that the reinforcing goes up above the top right at the corner there where it cuts in, and then it drops back down over the header.
Yeah, that's kind of an interesting feature. I wasn't expecting quite that, but there it is, and it's
well, that's because all the stress for the rest of the door all has to wrap around that end of each end of the door. Right, because there's no place in the middle to transmit it, so there's going to be a super high stress area on the left and right ends of the door.
Yeah, and you can even see that they've got the stringers going vertically down here, but then you can also see weld lines right here, which I'd call those like ribbing or something. Um, those stringers on the inside connected with the ribbing just help uh, change that load over to these locations, because there's not much here. There's no structural element here until you actually weld the door shut, and then it becomes structurally sound. And still, again, Ship 24 was just a massive tank, like an Abrams military tank. That was how strong that thing
So, a
was.
question for you, Thomas, from Mini DRM. Now that we're looking at 25, pop it or do something else with it?
Ship 25, ooh, that is a good question. Like, we really should do some sort of explosives test. Maybe a bit of cryogenics and explosives at the same time. But yeah, I could see the whole ship basically being popped here. I would love that idea. So that, like, you replace the flight termination system here with some more det cord. You throw in some cryogenics in it. If it's not going to fly, might as well blow it up. You might want to put it over at the burst pad or something, and clear out everything around it within 50 meters. Because if this thing decides to lean over, um, you don't want to clean up other things that you weren't planning on.
And you would probably use nitrogen in this case, correct?
Yeah, just nitrogen, and that would be pretty much it. And it would just be in those two tanks, and you could even have it halfway filled or something to simulate just gases, but it wouldn't explode. It would just be, can we rip the seams down these, you want it to go through and open up these, or open up in the center and just keep on going down as far as the stresses go.
And we'll take another short donation break here. We've got 4 more. PN What? $10. All aboard. Bernard Way, Canadian, $11. Cheers from Canada. Scat, 1975, 10 British pounds. Jumping on that train. Thanks for all you do. And John Dopker for 10 more. Right on. I think that explanation about the payload. Thanks for the explanation about the payload bay door situation. Choo choo.
We are missing about 500 and some odd likes here, so we need to get more likes in the program, please.
It does actually help with the algorithm. When you have people like the program, it helps spread the word. That's basically what the algorithm does. So speaking of tests, I keep coming back to this image because there was a test performed on this test article. This is 29.1, I think, or 26.1, sorry. And basically they did a whole puck shucker test, which means that they have these hydraulic rams underneath. It's none of the ones you can really see. They would be like visible under here at this point. But they pressed up against basically a ship puck. This is meant for boosters and ships for this entire test stand. It's very versatile. I call it the can crusher because it has these other hydraulic systems that will be able to pull down on rope. And there's a piece I call the top hat, which would go up on something like this, and it will pull down. And so it's trying to simulate stresses of like flight and max Q and all that. But anyways, we did a cryogenic test on this article a few days ago, or we at least were able to visibly watch it on Raptor Roost Cam. And it was just kind of neat that they're still going through testing out their systems. And Ship 24 and Booster 7 really proved like the structural rigidity of these systems. It did cartwheels. It had holes blown in it 40 seconds before it even blew up. Pretty much it was at the very end when it had not enough pressure in the lines, and the engines were all on fire from hydraulics or whatever else was going on down there, that it finally gave up the ghost. That was just impressive to watch still.
I sort of suspect the engines may have eaten themselves, because without the tank pressure being high enough, the turbo pump pressures would have been dropping, and the combustion chamber pressures would have been dropping, and the whole thing could have fed back on itself and actually worked its way back up through the engines.
So, talking about the robustness, do you think that Elon might go back in and redesign or remove some of the robustness of the system?
I don't think so, and there's a good reason why.
So, Thomas, is now the time to bring up Elon's tweets from last night?
Just about. I think this is the last picture, so yeah, let's do it. So Raptor version 3 just achieved 350 bar chamber pressure, 269 tons of thrust, and he sends a congrats to SpaceX propulsion team. And this is the number I didn't see this. I was like, as soon as I saw that 269, I did the same math as he did. I was like, 33 times 269, 877. Oh my gosh, that is how many tons of thrust that you'll be able to provide. So I went through doing just like a 5,000 tons for the booster and the ship and all the cargo. And if you've elongated the ship even, you can get up to like that 5,000 tons ish mark. That's a thrust to weight ratio of about 1.7 if you just, hit it right from the start. So this thing is beefy.
It's truly going to be a rocket ship coming off the pad if we don't make other changes.
Yeah.
So I've got a feeling that there is a feeling at SpaceX that the booster might be strong enough that rather than lightening it, well, let's just make it faster.
I mean, that's the general. I think the general sense is that they will delete the parts if they don't need them because it just simplifies the whole process and production. But they don't really care much about mass of the vehicle as much as a normal rocket company would. So, like originally they were looking at doing it as carbon fiber, as light as possible. Then they realized stainless steel, it's cheap, it's easy to manipulate with TIG welding or other types of welding, and it works out to be a very good production material. So very quick, very cheap, and very reliable. Very, very reliable. So like when they have had leaks on test tanks or plastic explosives go off on the vehicle during launch, it still just keeps on going. So yeah, I'm really excited about this, and this is very stable, especially in this area. You can start to see a little bit of instability right in there, but they get it up to that 350 bar pressure, and it just pretty much lasts the entire time right there.
Yeah, at some point, I mean, that's a 1 minute fire. That's 50% of almost a full mission right there.
Yeah, so I think NSF, they specifically asked about this. What was it? Right here.
Yeah, they had the McGregor footage of a 70-second test.
Yeah, so that's it right there. That is just impressive. So it's 70 seconds, and this is about right because it's over a minute here.
Yep, that's about 70 seconds right there.
So, that's a pretty good spot. And it's one of those things where Elon tweets about this. It probably happened that same day, unless you just got the news.
Yeah, I got a feeling this was hours old, not days old.
Yeah.
Well, he did say he was very loquacious last night that they are on the ragged edge of the engine trying to eat itself up. The chamber pressure and temperatures were absolutely insane.
So I'm bringing this up. It's an old tweet from 2016, but this was their original goal. It says, production Raptor goal is specific impulse of 382 seconds and thrust of 3 meganewton or 310 metric tons at 300 bar. So they're going up above the current bar by quite a bit. They've exceeded the bar of to 350. And this is back in the early days of like Raptor 0 and Raptor 1. So those would be like the original prototypes. Yeah, they've exceeded 350 bar or to 300 bar by 50 bar here. And the other side of it is they're going to 310 metric tons as of 2016. That was their original goal, or approximately. I mean, they're getting pretty dang close. That's basically 270 tons. They're 40 tons away. So,
Yeah.
wow.
It's going to be what this other also says. If they want to be conservative, they can run at their full original Raptor 2 rated thrust with these things running at 80% and coast their way to space.
Pretty much. That one of the things that's interesting, I think it was in here. It was somewhere else maybe, but he was specifically talking about that the Raptor likes to eat itself. It just sits there. Oh, that was the other video I was looking at. The Raptor has basically film cooling as well as where was it? I think it was from Tim Dodd in here. I see a good friend Mouser in there as well. That was funny. But yeah, they have the current like two methods of here's a bunch of the other information I was looking for. Oh, this is the old stuff. Never mind. But yeah, that is impressive. Yeah, I just don't seem to be able to find it. Anyways, that is super impressive to see the amount of thrust. I even went through and looked at what if they did 9 engines on Starship with that same amount of thrust, with the vehicle weighing about 1,200 metric tons, and that's a thrust per weight ratio of 2 at that point when it's filled up with fuel and it's just has started up its engines and is leaving the booster behind. But yeah, that was impressive to think about. So that'll actually work out really well. For instance, if you do 1,800 metric tons with a tanker variant, because if you want to increase your payload specifically as fuel, you burn more fuel to get more fuel up into orbit. So that's where you get to like that 150 to 200 metric tons route.
And while we're moving over to Sanchez, Crossroads just gifted 10 more RGV memberships.
Wow, we're at like 35, 40?
At least 35, yeah.
Wow. All right, so this is an old picture. So this is not this week. This is the 30th of April again. That's this week. So you'll spot quite a few changes just between those two. And I'll actually kind of go back and forth between them.
Don't go
here.
back and forth so much. It pixels for 10 seconds every time you flip.
Oh, I'll see if I can change that here on my end. Sorry about that. Reduce my frame rate. We're going to try something else next week as well to help reduce that issue. But yeah, let me try that again here. Is pixelation a problem still?
Still taking 5 seconds.
Ooh, okay. I'll not do that then. But the big difference here, first off, going left to right.
United Rentals has been evicted.
It's moving day. They've been moved out. Also, another big area of change is right here. So we have the Mega Bay being constructed. And I think those are the two like big changes that you can visibly see, but there's also a little bit in here. So anything with soil, typically you'll be able to see those changes as well. So this was the power distribution and everything else going in here. That's right. Sorry, I forgot to not do that. Okay. Anyways,
it's a little bit. It's only 3 seconds now.
Oh, it's reduced only to 3. Ouch. But what's interesting on this side is we spotted that they have these pieces right here, and this one right here, which is enough to make a fourth, which is perfect because you have 4 corners going up the entire building, and this will work very well with it. So you can see at least at these 2 angles, you've got all of the side pieces in, and then what are the elements called right here? That are the side strips.
The Ziegert.
I was going to hand it over to him, but yeah.
Yeah.
Ziegert.
And what are those used for?
They basically support their structural support for the siding.
All right. And speaking of the siding, we have spotted it as well. So this should be the siding up here. This one kind of concerns me. It looks a little bit almond color, but the rest of it's white.
Well, that's for the siding for the rental unit as opposed to the fancy one.
Yeah, I'm not sure why. Maybe it was sitting down in the dirt or something, and now it's just a little bit of Roberts Road tan.
Well, the impressive thing here is the amount of steel that is still sitting on the ground. I think we're looking at probably half or 2/3 of the new wide bay are already on site.
Yeah, and we're still missing quite a bit as far as like paneling, let's say. Ziegert, you can see some of that actually right here, but this is fast. And the interesting part is this is the second level. They're building the second level before they start with the first. And there's a good reason why. Philip, do you want to brief us on that?
Well, the foundations are different, and because you've got the base plates that need to bolt down to the concrete, which are very wide and very long, compared to these units, which are easily mountable and assemblable on these temporary racks, where if you went and build the first floor, the base plates that the raw steel that's underneath them, or the jigs, would have to be much bigger to support the base plates. So it's easier to assemble the base plates in the first level on the concrete and bolt it down, and then attach these much simpler connections after that.
Well, I think part of the question I was asking about is the concrete itself. What was the time length that will take to cure?
Well, with standard concrete would take 7 days. You're going to be up about 80%. 14 days, you're going to be up around 90%. And then at anywhere over 7 days, you can probably start to erect on top of it because you're not really putting a big stress load on it at this point as far as wind loading. So we should start to see the assemblage of the first floor. Probably, I would say sometime this week if the weather holds.
I hope it does. Nice. I hope it doesn't hold like last night. I don't know if everybody has heard. The Port Isabel area got tornado, at least one fatality and 10 or more injured.
Yeah, we heard from Maria as well. The tornado stopped just in front of their shop, pretty much. There's something about a transformer just across from the shop that it were either damaged or was pretty much that was the end of it. But that is still terrible news, especially for the Brownsville and South Padre area. But it was the Port Isabel area specifically that was hit. So that was just jaw-dropping news, and that happened what time? Like 4
a.m. Yeah, about 4 a.m.
And that's not when you are awake typically. So most people are asleep at that time of day, and that's just terrible news, and it's very scary to hear about. So heart goes out to the fatality and anybody else who's been injured or harmed in that.
So while we're comparing, let's look in the area around the inventory tent, because that's another big change.
Yeah, that's a huge one. We even have an area. I think it was it's right over here. So it's an area we'll get to in just a bit because I did all these A/B comparisons and I'm wondering if they're still good. So we'll get to it in just a little bit here. But I just wanted to kind of show again that United Rentals, they're just gone. This area is changed quite a bit as well. So specifically, if you're looking at the plates, we've got tents and everything else, cover those up, and these just disappeared. And I think we know where now, or hopefully know where. So the steel plates are being covered up, and they'll be connected directly to the water deluge system. There hasn't really been much changes on these, but there is some good news on the 2 transport stands. We'll get to those on the ground photos here in just a bit.
And then look at the Y piece to the very left edge.
This one right here, the reducer is now gone. You can actually see part of it up here. So again, that's this piece down here. So compare that point to now. You can see that the reducer's here, the rest of the pipe is over here, and it's just been torn apart. So plans have changed. We think this is one of those good times to kind of talk about this. Is that they will have plans and they will be drawn up, and they'll be going through and building something, and then they will decide, no, we're not going to do it this way, we're going to do it another way. And specifically, this is, I think, revolving around how Booster 7 and Ship 24 destroyed some stuff, to the fact that it may have saved them some time on digging for a week and helping expose some issues there, for, like, let's say the foundation on the orbital launch table. But this case, they, I think, will have the ability, instead of having this reducer, they'll go to a larger pipe, because now they have the opportunity to redo some systems, and we'll get to that on the launch side as well. But this is kind of some evidence of that direction of thinking, that they will go back to a more rigid or robust system here.
Yeah, I think that, long term, because more of the supply lines at the OLM were damaged than previously thought, and now that they have access to them, they've got to repair them. They can easily redo them to a new configuration that works better with the deluge system.
Yeah, I'm also noticing that the entire, like, deluge system itself, it should still function mostly the same. But the one thing that we have a question on is there was the manifold that was sitting here not like 3 weeks back now, 4 weeks back, when we did the flyover on the 17th. There was the manifold that was just sitting right here. That's gone. Speaking of which, there was this S pipe right here that it was not there last week, but it is there, on this flyover on the 12th. And then yesterday it disappeared. So things are moving around quite a bit. It's moving day all over the place. And we'll kind of I'll repeat that phrase because it's very relevant to a lot of what's going on at Starbase. In fact, there'd probably be two thumbnails for the video here. If we had the choice, it would be either moving day or we have a question of an interesting little pad here. We'll get to at the build site.
Well, so while you're on this picture on the left edge there on that roadway in, just to show how much things change, do you have the ground photos looking in through the gate of the same area?
Yes, I do. I'll have to scroll down a little bit. So here's the that same area with some pipes. Actually, if I got a little bit wider view, kind of looking at all of them at once is useful. This is a wider view. But yeah, so there is all of the stuff along in here that's just disappeared. Then we've got all these pipes here that have just suddenly appeared. I'm not sure where they came from, but it's always good to see stuff moving around and new things.
Well, I mean, the Jersey barriers behind them are new. The trailer to the right of them is new. The steel to the left of them is new. This is in one day. I mean, Mauricio flew on Thursday and took these pictures on Friday, and that changed in 24 hours.
I mean, the amount of changes that we're seeing here, we don't normally see within a week. Like, that's how many changes we'll be seeing here. So we won't be able to call out every single one. Despite like having that A/B comparison, even during that 24-hour period between the flyover and the ground photos, a lot changed.
There was one change that we didn't discuss yet, that on the overhead pipe that goes on top of the that had 4 down pipes and now has 5, right in the middle of the picture, right there.
The tank manifold pipe.
The tank manifold pipe.
Dead center.
This one right here.
The black one.
The black one.
Oh, yes. So this is the before picture here, and here's the after. There's a little bit of a change going on right in here. You can see on both of them that there is a a little bit of a manifold on the first one, but this now has a manifold going off. It looks like at a 90-degree angle here. This one's not the best view, I think, to spot that, but you can see that little bit of a circle right there. So that's a bit new. We expect that this will be for the 4 water tanks. This is probably the plumbing going in, and this will probably be where water is the inlet on the pipe. So there'll be another pipe that's a 90-degree bend and elbow that connects to these. The idea being that if you fill it from this location, it fills up all 4 equally, or at least more uniformly, instead of, let's say, filling it up from this side to this side. But that was the one school of thought of why you put the manifold in the middle, or the
I mean, they're certainly redesigning on the fly as circumstances change. Obviously, first test flight, integrated test flight, prove some things and prove they need to change a bunch of other things, and they are not wasting any time. There's no paralysis of like, oh no, what do we do now? It's like, okay, just do this.
Yeah. There's so many details even from last week. I think we even mentioned that like here you can see this extremely well, that the holes are from large to small, repeating that pattern until you get to the last 5 right here, which are all smalls. They go with this pipe right here. So it's large to small, all the way up to large, and then 5 smalls. And this one's an interesting one. It's this plus these other 4. So there's this one and these other 4. Sorry. Anyways, it was one of those details that last week I was so excited to find. Have to mention again this week, but there is just so many changes on all of the site, even at Sanchez and elsewhere. This was another area that we kind of compared a little bit last
So
Thursday.
last week that was all tent.
Yep. And it was appeared to be for painting, but things changed apparently because like there was only a little bit of paint work that seemed to be done. So this one was painted, and then the rest were pretty much left as is. So there's a little.
Okay, I got a supposition here. Look at the ground. Look at the color of the ground. Was it not painting, but maybe sandblasting and removal of green paint?
Maybe something's going on there. You can see there is a change in the soil. I didn't notice that until you pointed it out.
I didn't notice it till 5 seconds before I pointed it out when you pulled that picture up. So everybody thinks we have all this scripted and rehearsed. No, we're discovering right along with everybody else.
And we spent 8 hours going over these in the aerials in the last 2 days.
Yeah, or more than 8 hours. I mean, it was like 5 hours one day and 4 hours the other. So yeah, it's a lot of research that we go into looking at things, and this is just one of those many things. We looked at this originally as maybe part of the water deluge system. If it's going to be a 2-stage system, you might run pipe up the side of it. That was the thinking at the time, based off of a video of a water deluge system that we've seen at, I think it was Slick 40, or it might have been Vandenberg, which is, I can't remember their designation on that one. Was it 6?
Yeah, I don't remember.
It's not one I see often and care about as much as Florida, and then I care more about Starbase, of course, but it's called 40. Thank you, Hoppy. And then they've got a new one is going to be at 6 is the new one.
So now we're over to this lovely new. Last week they had this beautiful gravel right outside their inventory tent, and everything was shoved over against the fence line. And what's it look like this week?
Bam, concrete and shelving everywhere. And then this side, this was on Thursday. They had gone through and cleared out this area basically between those basically almost 2 weeks or just less than 2 weeks. There's even other things like over here. There's a ring that moved around, a bunch of other little things here and there. But the main part is this area is really changing. There's even changes up here as well. Just items and odds and ends really moving around. But that's kind of the cool part is going through and looking at these. You can see they've been moving a lot of material around. So a bunch of it was here, moved it up here. Some of it was moved here, kind of just went elsewhere.
Some of it was moved to the left. Some of it was moved over where we've been seeing. We were commenting earlier on all the stuff that magically showed up in the entryway on the left side of Sanchez. They're in massive upheaval of where everything is in this area.
It looks like all those white bags of perlite are looking for like they're going for the dumpster run.
Just about. I don't know if they're gonna keep them or not, but they've had them around for a while. And this is the interesting stuff. Is perlite's the same substance you have in your potter's plants. It's those like little white beads basically that are like foam, but they're not exactly foam. That's perlite. It's the same stuff. It's a thermal insulator for use in cryogenic tanks. It's really easy to use. It's a what is it called? A rock or mineral rock?
It's a volcanic. Yeah, it's a volcanic rock.
But again, one of the things that we mentioned earlier, things changing very rapidly. I'm just going to jump right to the ground shots of this area right here, because there were some massive changes. I'll just go right to them here. They've started putting down rebar and concrete. Is going to be within a day or two of this. So probably either Sunday or Monday, we will see all of this as concrete if it hasn't been done already. That's how quickly they're going.
Yeah, they're not slowing down anywhere on this site. We'll see this. We'll see more of the same as we get over to the build site. It's also under massive upheaval.
Yeah, things are just moving so quickly here. And I'm speaking of moving quickly, I just realized we skipped over some parts I was going to mention briefly. Let me go back up to this location here. I think this is it. Now I'm second guessing myself. I guess you can barely see it, but it was on the transport stands for the boosters. They have gone through and started adding the additional stiffeners. So there's one right there. There's one right there. And you're also seeing the other side of it too. So there's scaffolding in the way. But anyways, they've done this for the booster 4 transport stand that's over at the very end of Sanchez. This is a really good sign that they're going to be doing like cryo tests, or there's going to be something with a lot more weight on it than just normally what the booster has. Anyways, that's one thing to point out, that those new stands are going that direction.
Yeah, they are multiple projects going on in each of these areas, and trying to keep track of it is just becoming harder and harder.
Yeah. By the way, that whole part about United Rentals moving out, we still don't know where they went, but stuff has been moving in quite rapidly, even from the day before a bunch of this didn't exist. We've got like this new pipe with flanges. We've got at least 2 flanges here, and then 3 elbows. So 1, 2, 3, and then there might be another flange over there. Not sure. Anyways, it's just really interesting to see like all this stuff suddenly appearing out of nowhere. It's just moving around.
Yeah, I was trying to count the number of forklifts that we saw in some of these pictures. They were everywhere in that area.
Yeah, it's just impressive. So I'm going to actually go through and go through a few ground shots here. And Dave, if you want to go through and talk about them with Filicate here for just a bit.
Yep, if you pick that one or the one next to it. Yeah. So if we look here, we've got 3 rows of large outdoor racking material to store stuff on. Only the row up along the tent that we see a aero cover and some things there. That row existed. The other two are brand new, and they're already filling them in. Like they've been up a day or two, and they've already got half load of everything on them.
It's amazing though that they're storing all this material outside. I'm almost expecting at some point a tent pops in over top of this sometime in the future.
Well, I mean, I will say that this, at least this area now, is predominantly stamped stainless steel, which means it's pretty weather resistant, and other than dirt, not a big deal. And I don't know that they really care about dust and dirt too much at Starbase because they still build in tents.
Yeah, it's everywhere.
It does bring up the question, as you said, if they will bring out more tents later on or what they'll do.
I'm still predicting the inventory tent is inventory tent number one, and that there will most definitely be more inventory space being allocated in Sanchez. I could see Sanchez having 2 or 3 of these tents. While we got a short break here, while you had to run, I got a couple questions to throw up for you, Thomas. From been a while, but from Zach Howdick. What type of welding do they use? Automatic or semi-auto?
Well, they've been using TIG welding. I'm not sure if they're using auto or semi-auto, but they've also gone to autogenous laser welding. So that's where there is an auto.
Well, they're doing robot TIG and MIG. They're doing hand TIG and MIG. They're doing laser for putting skins on things like flaps and stuff, which we saw very nicely when we were at the Brownsville airport, where they conveniently donated one of SN8's flaps. So you can get right up to it and really look at it like from 2 inches away. Next question was from Mini Dr. M. How much fuel could you put in the nose cone? Would you be mass or volume limited?
Right now it's both. So the nose cone itself, you're about 50 metric tons, I think, of propellants right there. There might be another 50 or so because of the fact that you've got the methane header tank up there as well. But I think that's just transferred from the original location they had it at, which was the methane tank, and then they just kind of moved it up a little bit. So it still might be that 50 metric tons ish. My hope is that they will do a smoother dome structure. So they've got those current flatter domes right now. I'm hoping that they will use those up at the nose cone section. And that basically would allow them to reduce the amount of volume that they're wasting and increase a little bit of the reliability of parts. Because right now it's basically 2 sphere tanks.
Okay, and then the next question was from Stephen Lowry. Payload door, once finalized, do you think they will switch to one thicker steel reinforcement or continue with their layered approach?
I'm thinking layered, but I'll ask the architect. Philakid, what do you think?
Well, I think you're probably going to want to layer it simply because you can then spread the load out over various points because the load's not consistent at any one point. And so you're going to have, as you layer it, you can control the amount of material you need. Out towards the edges, you only need one certain thickness to transfer the load. When you get in towards the inner circle where the real cutout is, you're going to need more material because the load's going to be more concentrated there. So you layer it so you can control your material volumes and be able to absorb and modify the load path for the stress.
Another element to take into that is production. It's going to be a lot easier to manipulate 4 millimeters of stainless steel than it is going to be 8 or 16. You can't really bend that very easily by hand or manipulate it easily enough without large machines. So they still roll it to the shape it needs to be, but you want to align it correctly. It's going to take a little bit of manhandling to do that.
Or a big press.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we might be getting a big press. We'll talk about that in a little while. Mauricio, are you still here?
Yeah, he's in and out for a little bit.
Okay. I will hold a question for him. We have 2 donations. Chris Lyons, $10. You guys rock it. And Mule Skinner Films, $1.99.
Thank you so much. We've got another piece. I've looked this up here. This was that American Boa flex tubes. It's basically cryo pipes and other flex lines. Even bits like this, bellows. We see a lot of these at Starbase, especially on the downcomer sections. I don't think this is specifically a downcomer section, but I'm looking at it as it could be, but it could also just be flex line or a lot of other things. It's just cool to see the suppliers of who builds the products that SpaceX uses. It's interesting because it's all of the supply chain that SpaceX has is not just across this United States. There's also international suppliers for different parts or different pieces. So for manufacturing equipment or for just bulldozers, for instance, that SpaceX needs, they'll be coming from all over the United States or all over the world. There's so many different parts and pieces that you see just coming about. Stuff from Germany, for instance, for the boom lifts. You just have things connected so much all over the place. So I just kind of like to look these kinds of things up and see what they are and who's supplying them. But yeah, supply chains are very critical. What is this? People always ask what this is, Dave, and you've worked in this
Okay,
industry a
so
little bit.
this is standard construction grade power distribution. We're looking at the back behind the guy's head of a circuit breaker panel mounted on a steel frame, and then a bunch of boxes that have tails coming out that you plug your extension cords into. So there's 6, 7 on each layer, and so there's 21 outlets on this particular side of this unit. And they've changed the ratings on some of them because there's some circuit breakers from the circuit breaker panel just laying around on top of stuff.
Yep. But you can see it's 120 volts AC. You mentioned that this was most likely hooked up to a generator last night when we were going through these
Yeah,
photos.
I mean, typically on a construction site, because you're on temporary power, it's either going to be a generator or it's going to be a temporary power feed because you don't have your permanent power and or your meters in, so everything is run off extension cords.
Okay. One other really cool view is just after these couple of pictures here. We get something that you kind of you're not really looking at this, but when you get to it here, we go, oh my gosh, there it is. There is one of those elements we've been looking for. It's those water cooled steel plates. But it's basically backed on this side, so you can't see through it. It doesn't have the vertical members being visible. You can see a weld line right here of where the vertical members are at on this one and this one. You can start to see the next one over, but it's kind of hidden there. But this is a really, really good sign to see. We were wondering if it was still at the inventory tent, or we could be looking at a completely different new piece. But we do have a measurement here. It looks like 12 inches. I think that's what it looks like. And it has SNO1 written on it. So serial 1 is weird because, or serial number 1 is weird because they've have, probably 12 other pieces or 14 other pieces so far. It's just very strange to kind of see that that's number 1. Maybe it's just number 1 of this variety.
Yeah, I would assume that's serial number 1 of that part.
Yeah, this could even be, I'm thinking it, a lot of people are seeing it differently, and I see it one way. Other people see it differently on the bottom section down here. I see it as a V shape going in this way and then back that way. You can see a weld line marking at this part right here. And either there's something else sticking down underneath it, and it's just like a bar. And then you can see there's a chain hoist behind it. It doesn't look like that's attached any other way than just being a chain hoist. But it's just an interesting shape down here for sure. So anyways, I just wanted to bring this up because people keep asking, where they're at. We see them over at the Sanchez site, and then they kind of disappear. A bunch of them are gone. We only have like 2 left, and this is now the 3rd one that we have, but it's coming from the inventory tent. This is where they're welding stuff. So this is going to be a welding, basically blanket. So you can basically keep the welding light out of people's eyes as well as the wind, because this is pretty much an open door. So this is looking into the inventory tent from Remedios, which is a public road. It's kind of weird in a sense that we're going by and checking out the inside of doors that are, it's like, wonder what the people are doing inside. But luckily this isn't a neighborhood or anything like that. And we're only interested in what's going on, what they'll allow us to see.
Know this particular door is always a prime spot for a photo.
Yeah, it's got some interesting details like these inside. So if they want to close the door, they can. But I think it's the issue of heat. As we saw in this picture right here, there's this big ass fan. That's that literal name of the company. So that's an interesting one to see. But they have a bit of heat problem in these tents because it's not AC controlled or anything yet.
Well, there are AC units outside, but there's too many open doors.
I don't think those AC units are either functional or fully hooked up or something, because otherwise they'd be running the system as it is. But moving on, we do have a lot of other supplies, like those are argon tanks, flex hoses, just regular inventory that's appearing all around Starbase, and that's typical. I'm still struggling to figure out what these are because they're capped, but they look like pipes. But why would you cap pipes?
Oh, you normally do to keep them clean, but it's sort of a redundant thing at Starbase to really try to keep stuff clean.
Yeah, I mean, it's clean 1 minute and then dirty the next because you already cut into it and started welding, and you get all sorts of debris inside, and they have to clean it out anyways.
Real quick here, I think Dave is a little low now, so I don't know if that's you hear him like that too, Thomas.
Yeah, he did kind of get a little bit quiet there. I didn't notice until now.
Yeah, we had some complaints that it was too loud, so I've been working my way down. I'm down to 60% now. I was at 50.
Yeah, go back up. Probably 75 would probably be fine.
Now let's try 70. They were still complaining around here last time. Okay. Yeah, I mean, they are still just madly racing through getting everything working at Sanchez. It's amazing how quickly this changes and how much they've got going on.
Yeah, I recognize a lot of parts, like we've got valves here, but then I don't recognize parts like this. I struggle at it because I'm like, I almost recognize it, and then I don't. And I'm like, it's definitely not a grid fin. It has kind of that shape to it right there, but it's definitely not a grid fin. It's just very interesting and odd, like for some of these things that you see, and you'll see them around, and it's like, oh yeah, that's this part, and there's millions of parts that they use at SpaceX, millions. There, because there's so many different suppliers, there's going to be different variations of the versions. There's different systems. There's the production systems, and then there's actual like vehicle. So you do get a lot of changes on these things. And I actually do have like a label that just says tote. That's TOT. Tote doesn't mean anything. But if you could read up here that little bit, it might say SpaceX, and then there's a tiny bit of writing above it that says what it is. But it's so small.
Or what department it was ordered for.
Yeah.
Hey,
Yeah.
Thomas, also notice the arc that the pallet is designed around. There's a distinct arc in that pallet, which potentially is holding the bottom piece that this is connected to.
Or it's just been sitting
9 millimeter or 9 meter.
Well, it does have like a 9 meter kind of arc, but I wonder if it's just warping from sitting out the rain for, I don't know, years or something.
Could be that too.
Or the fact that it wasn't on nice supported shells like this and it was laying cockeyed on the ground somewhere.
but look, it's smiling. But yeah, that is very a very interesting palette to say the least. And what's on it is, I think, a little bit more interesting, but it's just weird. And it might be they strapped it down on the left and the right, and the center is high centered, so it is pulling it up into that smile shape. But yeah, it's just a weird part. They do have quite a few interesting odds and ends that we'll have to go through and figure out as we move along. Um, oh, speaking of odds and ends, I didn't really notice these, but they're the power supplies that they're basically putting over here. So right
More
now,
transformers.
yeah, transformers and some power supply units and all of the stuff that they need. I'm going to jump back to another photo real quick just to show you where we're looking at. So there's that concrete pumper truck. I'll have to pretty much go back to the start. And that is basically being used right up in here. So in that area. So this is last week, and now I'm way zoomed in there. That's strange. It's not allowing me to zoom in over there. But yeah, there was this entire area that they're basically concreting in now. Probably just need to look at a better photo here. So this is it right here. So they are filling in all of this, and they'll probably put red dye on the top of these. This is basically their entire power distribution system. So it's coming in from Magic Valley, or not, is it LLC, or anyways, it's just Magic Valley.
Magic Valley Co-op.
Okay. Yeah, so they're bringing it all into here. This is their main station, and how does the power work here? So you bring in your main powers. What levels is it at there? And then
So it should be, from everything I've determined, it comes in from Route 4 at 32,000 volts. And then they'll be stepping it down. We know the wire that's running out towards the launch site is rated at 15,000, so it's probably running at 9 to 12,000 down the road. And then they'll have transformers at the point of use to drop it from that voltage to whatever they need. This area will also have the transformers for Sanchez, so for the gas separation plant, things like that, the utility tents, the inventory tent, those will all be fed from transformers here, probably mostly at 480, but be a mix.
Philkid, you've worked in as a lineman, or at least in the industry, working on power like this. Why do you step power down, and what's the reasoning for that, basically?
Because the electrical engineer tells me that's what he wants.
Okay,
I'll be real honest, Thomas. That's not my strong point.
Okay.
That's my field. You step power voltage up to step the current down. They're inversely related. So the wattage is voltage times current. If you double the voltage, you have the current. So you can run the same size wire and get more watts through it at a higher voltage, and then at the other end, you drop the voltage to raise the current up where you need to consume it. So you can ship 100 amps down a high tension line and get 1,000 or 2,000 amps out the other end at your consuming voltage.
Now, are you doing that to reduce the amount of resistance in the lines by increasing voltage?
Well, you're reducing the size of the wire, which is expensive.
Okay. So you're just saving on basically the wire itself. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, and that continues on up when you go to the really high tension lines that are up on the big skeleton towers. Those could be at 300 to 500,000 volts. Again, not very big diameter wires, but raise the voltage, keep the current the same. You raise the total wattage going down the wire.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to go into that a little bit because it's something we don't really talk about, is just some of those little details. I did want to actually bring up this particular object. We talked about this yesterday. It looks like it's another base for their pumps. So what did you call this yesterday, Dave?
That would be a sump for one of their pumps, for one of the cryo pumps.
Now we saw these or something similar to these that were basically pipes that were then painted black with a square top, and they did the square top pretty much at the very end once they cut
Yeah,
it off.
that's actually the well that the sump sits in.
Yeah,
So you do a steel pipe, you bury that in the ground in this case, and then you do a stainless steel pipe inside it that's got a round bottom on it, and that's what actually has your fluid in it, and the space between the two of them keeps it from freezing the ground and getting damaged.
yeah. So you don't want your ground transferring the heat into the system, and you don't want water getting in there as well. So that's why you'd use something like this.
Yep.
But yeah, it's really neat that they're getting there. Oh, little sneak peek into looks like mid bay over there. So we're getting closer to some of those photos. I usually try to remove all of the 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 build site photos and keep it Sanchez, but sometimes I miss them. Oh, speaking of the doors earlier, this one doesn't have it. That's why I couldn't remember anything on 26 because there's literally nothing on 26 for the
Well,
doors.
there's a space for it. They just never cut the hole.
Yeah, they didn't even have the stringers going across. That was the another weird part. It's like it's
Well,
strong, but it's not as strong because of that.
well, because they didn't put the stringers in because they were gonna cut the hole, and then they made the decision, nah, we're not ready for that, so just leave that there. Don't make the final cut, and 27 will change the stringer pattern, and you'll get the hole.
Yeah, it's always weird. So they did also have an interesting piece right here on 26. So you've got a vent with a filter, and I really have a hard time seeing it, but there is holes right here, here, and I think just one more like right in there. But those are basically to pump air in. And then this sliding like plexiglass door, we just think it looks a lot like a guillotine because it literally slides up and down, and we don't know how they pin it or latch it into place. So it looks pretty scary.
I
It's got
think
a
they do it. I think they do it like a patio door. You just stick a stick of wood in the side of it to hold it up.
I guess it works, but it does have a flat, blunt edge if it does come down. It's just very creepy looking when it's all the way up. And this is what they use as a handle to slide it. And they've got the do not use for flight, so not for flight panel in there. It's just a quick one. But it does mean that they can pressurize it slightly. However, they still have the crane attached. So I think it was which manhole was it? Yeah, there we go. It's the methane tank is still quite open. Even though it has structural elements
Actually,
here. No, that's not the
the
methane
nose,
tank. Methane
that's
tank's
the nose
below it.
cone. That's
Yeah,
the nose cone.
that's the barrel section. I'm sorry. What I guess it wasn't closed, or it might be closed on all of them. So that's that one.
The other one will be down. We may not be able to see it.
Yeah, I think it's just we didn't get a photo of that. So that's the methane tank right there. And I guess it's the LOX tank I'm looking for. But earlier I talked about the booster transport stands. Again, it's these new extensions, and this is a really good photo that Mauricio took just of this transport stand that's nice and zoomed in. You've got those extensions. I'm pretty sure that they're for cryo, but there could be a chance it's just because the transport stands are flimsy or something because they're built for a Starship that's a little bit lighter or something. But I doubt that. I think it's these structural elements are for cryo tests or something like that.
Well, while we're here, I got a couple quick questions. One's from Mando Dave. Do you think they'll be putting underground gaseous oxygen or nitrogen pipes between Sanchez and the orbital tank farm? I've got an opinion on that. What's yours?
That is a good question. I think we've wrapped up on all of the Sanchez photos, so I'm just going to go back to the beginning one. So they would basically have to take the Sanchez area. Oh, it's still doing that weird part. There we go. I don't know why it clips it. Anyways, the gas liquefaction plant is sitting right here. They would basically need to run it, let's say, either down this way or down this way, and then along Highway 4, or basically over Highway 4. I'm sorry, under Highway 4 here, and then all the way down to the launch site. The other element that we would also want to probably see is an area, let's say, as a pumping station or something around here, where you basically can also bring in, let's say, LNG along this way. So there's a facility probably 6 miles away that they're building. It's called Texas LNG. It's along the port, and it's just along Highway 48 as well, just right before the bend going to Port Isabel. That area right there would be perfect to basically run a pipeline for LNG, liquid natural gas, not natural gas, but liquid natural gas. It would be kind of expensive to do it, but if you're going to run an LNG pipe and, let's say, LOX and nitrogen from Sanchez, you would basically do it along this side of Highway 4. You would run it all together because it gets really expensive otherwise. And the really good direction that you're doing is you're reducing the amount of trucks. So the number of trucks going through and killing animals, or just ruining the road, or making a lot of noise pollution, or just the danger of a cryogenic tanker truck having an accident. More of these things you have going around, more chances of an accident you have. This reduces that danger by just using a pipeline. The pipeline actually would save the environment on this one. The only area that you would have of concern would be the mud flats. So you'd have to do some mitigations there specifically. But I do like the idea. It would save on costs if you're doing those like hundreds of launches a year, or 100 launches a year kind of thing, from a site like this. Even if it's just like 50 launches, you'd still be able to get away with using a system like that and still be able to save money. But it would take maybe about, what was it, for 50 launches, it'd be about 16 years to recoup all your costs.
Yeah, I like the idea of a pipeline. I don't like the idea of a gas pipeline. It makes no sense. The output of the air separation plant is liquid oxygen or liquid nitrogen. You don't want to boil it off and then 2 miles further away recondense it. That's recondensing. That is super expensive in terms of energy. You just want to pipe it as a liquid. Same as the LNG pipelines would be. So you would want liquid nitrogen, liquid oxygen, and liquid methane being piped in the end. Would be the ideal world.
Yeah, we went through and ran the numbers on this, Dave, and I think you ran it yourself at one point. It was like a 12 or 14-inch pipe, something like that, for what currently exists at Sanchez.
Yeah, something like that. It doesn't have to be very big.
And that's a natural gas pipeline. This site actually doesn't produce much. It only is able to produce enough for the site's need. Back when they were using it as a what is it called? A frac site. So this was like one of the first ones in South Texas. But anyways, they went through and basically shuttered this entire system down, and they had that like 14 to or 12 to 14-inch pipeline. The length of it and the lack of pumping stations, they would have to take about a year and a half just to do one launch with that one pipeline if it was natural gas, and then they had their own little cryogenic system to cool it down. And that's using was it like 3 or 4 pump stations in order to really get that to actually do anything useful, and that just doesn't make any sense. So LNG would basically be the main part that you want at the port. You bring it down. I guess I'd probably need to go through a map to show you any of those things.
Yeah, well, I mean, South Texas. Everybody thinks of Texas as being gas and oil country, but South Texas really isn't. It's marginal gas and oil down here. The real fields are much further north, up in the Permian Basin area. So you would liquefy it somewhere else and then pump it down the state. Like right now, like all their LNG, I think, is coming out of the Houston area. So all those trucks we see delivering LNG have been driving for 6 hours each way.
The one that's the closest is not like Houston. I think it's I'll actually got the map here, so let me bring this up. I know this is a little bit of a tangent we're going on. Closest one, I think, is over in this direction, San Antonio. I think is the closest.
Yeah, I mean that's the. I mean, the big areas, the Midland Odessa area is the center of the oil industry in Texas.
Yeah, so they actually do have quite a bit of natural gas in this area, but not so much in this area. So this area is just pretty terrible with natural gas. There's some oil that was here on South Padre Island and these areas, but it's pretty much already been they've gone after it and they're still going after it, but it's not as much natural gas. Anyways, I was going to mention this was the location I've talked about before. They're building Texas LNG right here. And the idea would be they would basically bring the gas pipeline to here and then over this way. Or I'm sorry, not gas, but liquid LNG. So LNG would be coming through here, and that would be the most direct route. And that's something you have to do with something like LNG because it is cryogenic. It needs the shortest amount of pipe length possible in order to be reuseful, and it has to be double double jacketed, vacuum insulated pipeline.
Say
And
that
that's
fast 3 times.
yeah, I couldn't even say it correctly the first time. But yeah, the idea of basically going here and then using this location and going up the route, like it's our fan favorite idea. It would be costly though, very costly, especially going across the mud flats. The only way I've kind of figured out that they could do it is by using a lot of what are those large planks of wood? I can't remember what they're called. But you basically cribbing. Sorry, you basically have to use large cribbing going across the mud flats to do all of your construction, and you would still have to go through and do something like what they've done for Texas LNG. Texas LNG, I believe it's this plot of land right here. They are reclaiming, or maybe it's one of these, but I think it was this one, to basically be part of this basin. So they're doing acre for acre. In this case, they're like almost doubling it for land exchange for the area that they're basically ruining the environment. Let's say for that little facility that they're building. SpaceX does need to do that as well for their launch site in order to expand. So this area right here, actually, I've got a better map than that I probably should use. So let me bring that up here. This is the parcel right here. This is the launch site. This is the parcel that is SpaceX's. They pretty much end it right here because this is the 1,000-foot line or something.
Yep, 1,000 foot from the high water line.
Yeah, so that's where they pretty much just end it right there on this line. And I think there's actually a trail that goes through there. But anyways, this entire plot of land that is in green is the area that they would have to go through, get Army Corps of Engineer approval to expand upon. And that's going to be interesting because they have to do some sort of land exchange with, let's say, U.S. Fish and Wildlife or Texas Parks Department or somebody like that. They would basically go through, buy the parcel of land, and then exchange it to the Texas Parks Department. And it would basically be for a way of guaranteeing that it's going to be maintained under the U.S. government, not SpaceX. But SpaceX could maintain it themselves. It's just the regulatory and other stuff is going to be a nightmare. Anyways, that's that's just a quick view of what's going on there. Let's go ahead and move on to the build site.
Yes.
So I hope this stayed locked in position because I went through and tried to. Yep, there it goes. So I want to show the comparison between the two sites of April 30th and May. Was it 12th or 11th? I think it was 11th.
The 11th was the aerial.
Yeah, and the 12th was the ground photo. So that's why I couldn't remember. But yeah, there is A lot of changes. I guess let's go from left to right, just to kind of mention what's going on here. So this area on the left side, keep an eye on that. You can see that they've gone through and removed a lot of the soil, and then they went through and did some backfill in here. So they put the soil back. There's all of this. What are those called? Culverts that they've put in place, and basically are preparing for drainage systems to be installed around in this area, probably in here, as well as maybe stuff over on this side on the right between the Mega Bay and the other side. But it's interesting is that this parcel for the longest time has been under a private owner, and it I believe still is. It's just been leased by SpaceX. So they basically are paying for the land and use of the land, and they own all the improvements upon it. Um, and that's going to be an interesting thing. Improvements up until the point where the lease expires. But anyways, uh, there is obviously Mega Bay construction. There is a lot of changes in this area right in here, and we'll actually get to all of these things. I'm just going to point them out beforehand. We've got the new Star Factory extension, but things are not as what we seem to believe, or have changed dramatically. Plans have changed, I think. There is major changes in here as well as in here, so you can kind of see the A/B comparison again for all of those. So especially look in this area and this area, things disappeared. It's moving day.
Yeah, the ground GSE construction building may not be constructing much anymore.
Yeah. It's changing quite rapidly on a lot of things, specifically on this side. So first off, I guess we'll go with what's changing in here and what we're talking about earlier. So they did finally finish all the concrete. You can see that last little bit of the corner of the pad. That's all done, and they have all of the or not all of the, but a lot of the construction materials to start building up vertically. And Philakid, you were earlier talking about the concrete taking about a week to two to cure. Do you think they're going to start off from this end and go around this way, since that's kind of the direction that they pour the concrete?
It's taken them about 2 weeks to make the complete loop. So I would say, yeah, they would probably start on the left front and then swing around to the counterclockwise around and finish up on the far right in the back of the front.
And I just did a quick count of the number of columns with concrete feet on them, and I think it's all there. I think there's 14 of them, and I think that's all they need.
There's about 14 pads here. I count like 16 here, but
yeah, I did a quick count. I got 14 columns, so I think we're close.
Yeah, and it's the smaller ones that are going to be harder to count anyways, like these smaller embeds.
And when you look at the steel, like on the left-hand side, there's those two columns are laying down. You can see how big the base plates are on them compared to on the left side, Thomas. The other.
Yeah. Well, there's these ones as well.
Those as well, exactly.
I just couldn't find the ones on the left side. I know what you're talking about. I'm just like, where are they? Oh, there it is. Now I see it.
And that way, then it's easier for them to erect that directly on the embeds versus building them on the racks and transferring them over, because the racks are designed above the first floor. The steel's identical, so it's easier for them to build on the racks. And then in this case, they only need one set of jigs to prefab the other sections.
Yeah, we've talked about this before. Is this area would be perfect right in here, or I mean, even honestly in here, once you start using up this material specifically for the base of the structure, used to set up those 4 jigs. Would you agree?
Oh, absolutely. And we know that they'll probably end up doing is bringing a crane into the center, which we haven't seen yet, And I understand, according to Nate, that there has been some discussion about some at least one or two large cranes coming to start the erection over here.
Yeah, I expect we'll possibly see some of that arriving in the next week.
I've been wondering if they would be able to use this crane at least to start up with the four corners, and that way they'd save themselves some
Okay,
amount of
so
time.
back to the old argument. Cranes that are working for SpaceX don't work for contractors and vice versa, with almost no exceptions.
Okay, so are you saying that the contractor specifically will be doing
Contractor will
this?
hire the crane he needs. Yeah, PBI or whoever's building that will hire their cranes.
Okay, because yeah, that was the one thing that it's like sitting there. This one's used by SpaceX, is rented by SpaceX for this particular task right now. But it's worth the thought until the contractor comes in and has to put in their own crane. But it would reduce costs potentially. Anyways, that's just my 2 cents.
With construction at this magnitude, I don't think they're worried about costs.
Good point.
$1 million plus or minus is rounding error.
Another thing to kind of go over and mention is this area right in here. It's got a lot of changes. We were looking at this last week and going, oh, this is in the wrong spot. These have got to move. So there's all this power distribution. And we figured out that these three culverts were not connected all the way through. There's culverts right in here. So those three need to be connected to those three. So basically, this culvert system is all of their water, basically runoff water needs to go into these storm drains. And I think they were going to replace this area right in here with those three storm drains. So there's quite a bit of volume that can go through there. And then it comes out through these three pipes, and then they will silt it here, or not silt it, but cover up the area right in front. And I think they'll probably do another one right in here to prevent silting from going into the mud flats. So any silt or debris, or let's say little bits of oil, it'll get collected in the first bits, first like basins, I guess you could say. And this is this week. They've gone through, removed the power, and now we've got all the conduit. Looks like it's going further down a little bit in order for them to go over the conduit with these three pipes. So they will be extending these all the way over, and we'll probably have like 245-degree angles somewhere to change the direction, because there's parallel pipes going on here, and that's kind of weird.
Yeah, there may even be an extra piece there, because I got a feeling that ditch may get fed into this above there. So this may all be converged and then ground filled.
So like a Y piece right here with a another piece going up this way.
Yep.
I could see that. In fact, we've got plenty of material to do it. We could just keep going straight on up all the way over to
Thomas,
here.
what's that weird thing in front of Wide Bay there in the middle of the frame?
Well, this is kind of what we're looking at right there. So it's a booster landing pad, sort of.
I thought they're going to be using Falcon for delivery now.
Yeah, that's a fun question of, like, it looks like a Falcon landing pad right there, but this is, I would say, like a booster landing pad, as if you are staging it. So you can see right here, they've staged one of the rings. It's a forward dome section. Let's get a better perspective on this. Not so zoomed in, and let's move over here. So that is basically a staging area. So it is a landing pad, but not a vertical like landing, but a move it over to this pad to rest until you are ready for production. And it's kind of cool. We also have those other labels. So Mega Bay gaseous nitrogen supply trailer, and then this one is super heavy tank press cart, and then this is super heavy tank compressor. So there's two different pieces, but that's the interesting elements that they already have these marked out
And no,
specifically for those.
neither of those pickups count as a tank compressor or a press cart. People are parking where they don't belong.
Yeah, I think these may have parked here and then they painted, because this is all fresh paint.
Well, I got a feeling those are probably part of the booster crew or the transport crew, so they know when the cart's going to be there or not. If they might even be the trucks that pull the cart, because those are both of those, the compressor and the press cart, are towed by gooseneck trailer mounts in a pickup truck.
Yeah. But yeah, this is just such an interesting design, because it is literally like what they have on the Of Course I Still Love You and Shortfall of Gravitas, and then the other one, I can't remember that name. Trying to think of it at the moment. Anyways, it's
Just read
very
the
similar.
instructions.
Just read the instructions. Yes, thank you. I needed to read those instructions, and I didn't. Anyways, it's cool that they actually have that same paint scheme, and they even had that same exact scheme of paint on the landing pad back when they were landing on with what was it, 15? No, not 15, 8 and 11. Around there, they had some paint like this, and then 15 came along, and I think it was by far just looked like this patch right here. You could even see it compared to that, because the paint had just worn away. But speaking of,
yeah, I was going to say, speaking of the ring yard, we have some more fresh paint there.
this is last week. This is this week. So you can see they've filled in some of these labels, and we'll actually go through and zoom on them in just a bit. But one thing to mention is this is one of those culverts that was coming through. But back to the labels. I think these are really for Mauricio and maybe for their drone photography, because they're really only usable in the air. The ground, you can see them. It's like VIP parking, but it's really big text. Why so big? I think it's just so that they can see it from the air. Or we could see it from the air, really. But yeah, let's go through and look at some of these things. We saw this last week. A lot of these are just booster gross acreage. It means just general booster parts, and a lot of them. So this is your staging area for booster. Same thing for these 3 spots, but then it comes to booster common. We've got an interesting label that's probably more correct than we've had for what this is. It's going to be a tooling ring wall, but the tooling is pretty close to what we would expect this was. So this is part of a jig for building different Starship components, and I'm just still kind of looking at it going, well, okay, it's a tooling ring wall and it's a jig for Starship components, but what exactly does it do? Somebody mentioned it the other day. I think it was
I think
Jake.
I think they said it was part of a transport stand for moving rings when they're early in their construction history.
Yeah, I thought it was something along the lines of like thrust sections when they're pointed down, because they do have to flip them. This is actually the inside we're seeing here, so that would, I think, be part of this same structure, maybe. But that's so weird looking straight down on this. It looks like we're looking at it inside out. So yeah, you get some interesting perspectives from the air like that occasionally. So yeah, a bunch of these tooling ring wall, and this one is unreadable. Tooling thief was here, because that doesn't have any
I have
writing now.
no idea what that says.
Because yeah, it needed to be swept before it got painted. But that's pretty funny, because I see a TH, like an I and an E, maybe an F, and then
I was wondering,
HE. So it looks like almost like tooling thief here, or was here or something.
yeah, I was wondering who might be tooling ship something, but I can't figure out what the rest of it is.
Yeah. That's funny. The thief stole the writing. So this word is oziv, not ogive. That's the way it looks like it's written, but it's oziv, and that is the curved dome of the structure. So this is the nose cone itself. That is oziv. Language is so fun. I got ship mid locks, barrel, another barrel, just lots of barrels everywhere. Domes. These are obviously not domes though, so there's mislabeling of current parts. And I talked with Jax about this before, and I asked, "Do you think that they will go through and put their ring yard up into here?" And he's like, "Yeah, that would be a great idea." He thinks that they might do it as well. We'll see. They've already got these two kind of sectioned off as where the rings will go.
I'm sure as soon as the other wide bay is built, that whole area will become more rings.
Yeah, undoubtedly. We actually got to catch a 5 stack, which is the Pez loader or Pez dispenser for Starlinks right in here. So that's the cargo bay. That was a really cool spot. It happened right when Mauricio was flying over, because you could see it in some pictures, but not in all of them. Let me jump back to where was I? I think it was over here. Make sure I've not skipped anything else. This is the old one. Need to go to this one.
Well, we do have to comment on the modification occurring to wide bay itself up top.
Oh, this one. Yes. I'd have to go to the ground shots to show that one a little bit better, but it's pretty easy to see here. So the scaffolding, it looks a little different. It was removed off the top. So now they've brought it down. Crane Man was actually pointing this out, that he thinks this is a entryway for bringing stuff in and out. I would kind of agree with that because they have brought things like glass and other elements in this area. So I think they're just keeping it open, and that was his comment as well. Yesterday we were talking about, well, what if they put a walkway or something around? I haven't seen any of these structural elements to do that. Philakid, what do you think? How much would it take to put up a walkway or something to be similar to the high bay?
They did it on high bay. No reason they couldn't do it here.
True.
And basically they added that afterwards. That wasn't part of the original design.
Would you expect that they would do it again at this location?
They don't need 2 catwalks. I mean, the only person we've seen out on that is Alon, right? We've seen him out there once, right?
At least 3 or 4 times. I think he lives up in high bay sometimes. So there's it's segmented on high bay versus mega bay. So this is all one continuous floor space. On high bay, it is literally 2 sections of floor. So there's the right hand side, which is high bar, the left hand side, which was probably an office or an area to sleep for Elon or something like that, because he's often seen up there right before flights or in the mornings or something along those lines. But anyways, I could see a single balcony maybe just on this side. It would be the side you would do it on, or the other side on the front, simply so that you can watch launches from this location if it's ever deemed safe to do so at the build site. I actually don't think they will. I think they're always going to close the build site for launches. What is your opinion on that, Dave and Philakid?
Yeah, I don't think there'll be anybody in that area for a launch.
Yeah, I mean, down at the Cape, they're 5 miles out or 4 miles out to the control center. It's going to probably be the same distance here, right?
Yeah, it's about 4.5, something like that. All right,
This
so
is a bigger rocket than is ever leaving the Cape, right?
yeah, so I mean, the idea of having a balcony on any of this building doesn't quite make sense when you already have it here. The balcony is just to hang out. You've had some drinks, or really, like, this is 2 different rooms, and you need 2 different routes to exit the building. So they've got an elevator and stairs over here on the high bay, and then they've got basically the balcony on this side and the balcony on this side. So you've got 2 egress points. which is interesting. You have to egress on the outside back to the inside to get to the same spot, pretty much for all the egress points in the corner here. But yeah, it's only for, I think, an office or a, Helon throws down a cot to sleep at the factory, literally. So, yeah, he does that with Tesla. I wouldn't expect him to do any less with SpaceX when they're having production issues or things where he needs to be on site for engineering purposes. Moving over to a couple of different spots, but mostly this area right here. You saw this pop up a little bit earlier. I threw this together to show what we have as Star Factory, what we would expect to be phase 1, which would be this area right in here. Should probably put a different line of color here. I was going to do like green or something. But anyways, this should be the Star Factory size. The footprint would be 320,000 square feet. That's based off the Roberts Road design. Then they would have on Roberts Road an extension back to about here that could be added on. But in this case, there's not a whole lot of room back here. So they've got this little building right here. It's called the Backpack Expansion. And then this is the really interesting part, is this new building that's the one right here. You can kind of see the yellow. I'll actually zoom in on that. This is the current construction that they are working on. It's pretty much all going to the side of this building, and it looks like they're about to put in new footings up against this building so that they have one continuous building. Or at least from a practical sense, on the outside, it will look like it's a continuous building. It will have probably a wall in the center.
Yeah, we might see them just punch through that wall and connect the steel up to the outside column on that wall there, rather than put a separate footing in.
Yeah, they already replaced this wall twice. What's the third time?
Yeah, I mean, you got to tear it out to make it work as one big operating building, right?
Yeah. You might have it segmented for other reasons. It's not fire or anything like that. We've talked about that. And
there is mechanical in that back corner too. Back in that section back there.
Yeah, so you wouldn't punch a hole through in this side, but in here there's already a couple of holes for doors and things like that. You might just go ahead and just open them up entirely. Or you just leave it as it is, because you might have other reasons for, let's say, sound or noise pollution. You don't want this really loud machine interfering with the sound over here. Who knows? They have reasons for all sorts of doors. But Philakid, what do you think on this? Do you think they'll just open it up or leave it mostly closed?
Yeah, again, it's a matter of production flow, and we weren't expecting this building on the left anyway. So, who knows what they're going to do? And as you said, they've replaced that wall twice now. So, obviously things are changing.
I was kind of expecting this building, based off the blueprints of Roberts Road, it would basically go up to about here, though. So it was about half the distance of this, or just a little bit above half. And it would basically go from here and go all the way to here. And it was, 2 mega bays in this location on Roberts Road. And actually the mega bays would be right in here and like right in here. But anyways, this is about what I'm thinking that they're going for, because some major changes are going on over here. Everything's been moved out. Shelving is cleared out. Shipping containers are just gone. They're removing shipping containers in here, as well as the I haven't removed this shipping container yet, I think. Unless they did that last night. I can't remember. Somebody said
off.
Yeah, solar is just gone all throughout here. And I have this blue line marked here in order to kind of demonstrate what could be going on. So either they've decided this side over here will be Star Factory, and that they will leave the tents. That might be one direction they go. But in general, I don't think that's the case. If they're already clearing out this area and they're also clearing out this area, there's missing stuff everywhere. I'll actually go back to the previous photos to compare those two again. I have to zoom out. Sorry about that. So this is the original on April 30th. Lots of stuff. They were kind of clearing out here a little bit, and we were kind of wondering what's going on there. And then really cleared out everywhere along in here as well. So they've removed this little building right there.
Look at all the steel racks that were on the low bay area. Yeah.
Right there. Those all got moved into the aisles between the tents. So you can see them moving over here and over here. So they're just rearranging inventory as much as they can. But here's the crazy part. Tents 1 and 2 parts are all over the place. Like we saw them at Sanchez. So I'll actually go back to one of these photos here just to show if I can. You've got these. These are all over from tents 1 and 2. These pieces. They're these little, I don't know, shelving or stations to basically hold stuff. It's not really shelving, but it's able to manipulate and work on things. Anyways, the amount of stuff that's going out of tents 1 and 2 makes me think they're clearing house for the tents 1 and 2 as well as the GSE. This used to be called this was a production building, but now they're using it for like pipe work, and now they might not be using it at all for anything. So I think this building, this I don't know, what do you call these, trailer office building?
Yep.
The bathroom, they're all gone. They're deleted, as well as possibly tents 1 and 2, and then eventually 3. Because this is probably the future of Star Factory. This is about 720 to 730,000 square feet. That's a lot of floor space. It's not as much as Gigafactory, which was like, what, 10 million? I'm sorry, yeah, Gigafactory Texas was 10 million. This is, 720 to 730,000. So not even a tenth of that size, but this is a rocket factory. There's not a lot of purchasers of rockets, but there is a lot of purchasers of cars. So it does make sense that they would like to have a big factory there. But in the same sense that they are building this up, this will be their prototype production and prototyping of vehicles. I would have kind of expected that they would need more floor space because of that. You're going to have different tooling or different equipment to change things out. And Roberts Road is going to be production only. So they don't need as a big of a building. So they only need it to go up to about here at the very end. And they will be able to produce at least that 3 a day, or 3, I'm sorry, a Starship every 3 days as the goal with a building this size. So remember, if this is a ring yard here, this could also be a ring yard in here. Maybe not that close, but up to about, let's say here, all the way up in through here. That would be impressive. Basically, a high bay, 2 mega bays, and a mid bay, which nobody wants to use still anyways. That's the general end of what probably mid bay will be, is like nobody wants to use it for anything because whatever, but maybe it gets used for nose cones, just like the windbreak does.
Hey,
They
Tom,
may, yeah.
when at this point the most we see is a 4-ring stack or maybe a 5-ring stack that has ever come out of the tents, correct?
In height,
Yes.
it would be nose cones would be the tallest, but 5 rings, yes.
Okay. And so with the factory production being built, everything we're going to see come right now, if you look at the ring yard, there's, one segment, 2 segment, 3 segments, 4 segments, and potentially that ring yard becomes nothing but 4 and 5 segment high pieces after they come out of the production tents for stacking in high bay and mega bay, right?
I think so. I mean, it's going to probably be going left to right, but yeah, there'll be those 3, 4, 5 ring segment stacking going to high bay, mega bays. Does make sense.
Yeah, so there won't be, that'll be almost ready. That all The only thing that'll be in the rig yard is ready for stacking components by the
Yeah.
time it comes out of the tents. And that's a lot of ships if you think about all those spots.
Yes, it is. One thing that is going to still be an issue is the scheduling a little bit. So their supply chain and inventory management is going to be very hectic. So Sanchez, they're going to have to probably double or triple up on the tents, as we mentioned earlier, just to keep up with production here. So there will be certain supplies you bulk up on because you do it in a large order. You just go through and say, I need a bunch of these parts. They build them for you, and then you wait for another 6 months while you're getting the other sets of parts, because that's a whole whole supply chain issue. Um, they're already doing a press pit down here. I'm thinking it's for stamped parts, but it could be for all sorts of other pieces and odds and ends. A bunch of you might be also wondering what this purple section's all about. This might be the what they call it in China, the nail house. There's no actual house here, but in China they have a term for a parcel like this. Basically, it puts a stop to all work. So in order to build the Star Factory from here all the way up to here, they would need access to this parcel. The only other option would be your Star Factory goes from here all the way up to, like, let's say here, and then just goes around and then up this way. So you just kind of cut off this section, and you kind of look at it as the house from up. That is just really dependent on if they're able to get a lease agreement or sell the property or have the property sold. I suspect that they're trying to increase the price on the parcels. So for instance, this one, we know that they're like asking for $3 or $4 million on it. It's quite pricey. It's only worth maybe $400,000 to $600,000 based off of its location, and maybe you could put a business there to sell something. That's the only way you would get somebody to buy this. And maybe they don't want to sell to SpaceX, or maybe they just really want a lot of money. I don't know. But the question is the same here. Is it they're just asking too much? And if this is going to be, $3 or $4 million like that one, could it be that they're just waiting for Star Factory to be built up, and this is going to be what, a $60 million building, something like that? This would be another $3 million to purchase this parcel. That would be kind of pricey, but might be worth it.
Yeah, I mean, if SpaceX builds their building around that empty site there on the left, that site becomes worth less, because he can never sell it to anybody else, because you're looking at you're landlocked by a parking lot and a building on 3 sides. So it's like the value of the property drops.
Yeah, it's it's not going to be useful for anybody except SpaceX, obviously.
Yeah, and so the guy's never ever going to be able to, if he doesn't get rid of it soon, he's dead with it.
Yeah. Speaking of which, we'll jump over to this, and this is going to be the village as well. Oh, I just moved it. Whoops. I think I was going to keep them stacked up, but oh well, I guess that's close enough. So yeah, the village itself has moved to selling quite a bit of the lots. I talked to Maria last week. Some corrections, for instance, on this location right here. This is contractors. So contractors have long-term housing, and this is for them, according to what Maria was talking about, or at least what I recall. And I have to go through and actually finish up watching a lot more videos, because there's a ton of great information from Maria Pointer, which is also Starship Boca Chica. She goes through and records a bunch of details in her videos that I haven't caught up on, or I've watched them, but some of it's like a year old, that it's still very relevant to today. So I need that refresher. But anyways, the village itself, we were talking about how they're selling off plots of land. There's been at least a few more sales. I think it was in a house in here. I can't remember which one it is, but It's one of Maria's old friends that they've sold because they pretty much saw the bulldozers coming through here and said, it's time to go. Last thing they want is to be locked in and not have their view anymore. They want to sell when they still can and have a pretty view. So there's not too many there's not many residents left. There are still quite a few. The simple way to kind of judge it is by the roof. So black ones and dark gray ones, those are the SpaceX homes. But this is becoming more of an actual proper community. So it's got, all of the amenities eventually that you would have with a community, but it's got various degrees of living though. So this is like single workers coming in, working long shifts, sleeping in these. That's kind of the direction they're going. But they're also going with a long-term leases. So they, instead of having SpaceX workers coming in from Hawthorne to live in these homes for like 1 or 2 days out of the week kind of thing, and then just using it as like a version of Airbnb for SpaceX only, they're now going over to a long-term leasing of these properties directly to families. So things are improving in that direction. It's really becoming a company town.
Hovercraft.
What was that? Oh,
Hovercraft times 2.
yeah. That was a cool little piece we were looking at the other day. We've got both of them. Last time it was actually in action, but now we've got both of them sitting here. And so, yeah, there are only 2. I thought there might be another one of these floating around. I think it was just the same one, and I couldn't find a serial number to match, but it was kind of just fun to think about, like, oh, they've got 2 of them. They could get more of them. They probably will. It's very useful for transporting crew or workers basically to and from the site. From South Padre Island and Port Isabel is really where they're coming from for this. Normally with traffic, it takes about an hour. With bad traffic, it's even worse. It's like 2 hours. It's only 5 miles. So this is the direct route, is to travel through using the hovercraft basically.
It's only 5 miles across the river. It's
Yeah,
28 miles going up and down.
it's going back to this, I guess. There we go. So you have to go all the way down, up and around on Highway 48, and then all the way over the causeway to get to South Padre Island. So it's pretty close from distance-wise from here all the way up to here. But yeah, it's a terrible commute. It's like I could see work from home, and it's not that far. Oh, that's not a great direction.
Isn't that why they use the hovercraft, though?
Hey, Ninsar, welcome back.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's exactly what we're talking about. Why they use the hovercraft, just because it's such a terrible commute.
And is that hovercraft Maria's?
No, it's not Maria's.
She said she had one, a small one.
She was talking about a friend in Alaska when I last talked to her, who they were looking at doing some hovercraft stuff, but he unfortunately passed away. And they were talking about doing hovercraft like as a demo to SpaceX. This is back in 2012 or maybe even before that. But yeah, that never came to pass as far as I know.
Fair enough.
We do actually probably need to have her on sometime. That'll be fun.
That would be fun. And now that Mauricio is being followed by Mr. Elon Musk, I'm sure we can have him on too.
Oh, I thought we were keeping that on the down low.
Why would we keep that on the down low?
Well, I mean, you don't want to gloat.
There's a difference between announcing and gloating, no?
Okay, good point.
We're very proud that he's following our friend Mauricio and our friend Marcus House and our friend Ellie. And I'm hoping that our friend CSI Starbase Zach is next. If not you, Thomas.
Oh, I'm not very popular on Twitter. I don't post a lot, so I don't think he'll see me. It's just me. I don't post a lot of things.
Well, I'm hoping for a turkey strike.
Oh, the whole thing. That sounds good. Makes me want to post more. By the way, I saw this and was just like looking at it, and I don't think it was this particular image. I was thinking it was something else. It would look like a painting stripe, but it is literally the building
This
itself.
is a much better image than the one you got confused on.
Yeah, I love those optical illusions that it's like, what is that? Maybe I can spot it. Anyways, I don't need to. Anyways, it was just that they've gone through and put this concrete, or the blacktop, I mean, in the parking lot. So now they have more parking. I mean, they've got parking here, 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 all along in here, and here. It's just everywhere. And
Yeah, look at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 SPMTs parked in a row.
yeah, I think this is like all of them right now. That's a different kind of parking lot, but there is, I think, every single one of them, and we can even see this one from the top. They are connected together. We saw that in the ground photo as well, and I was like, "Oh, that's interesting."
It's right there.
That's the one. So you can see it right here. They've got the hoses connected, and then they've got a bracket connected in between them, so they're physically meshed together, basically. And I've got a 7.5-inch water bottle for scale.
They're just
That one-
like blocks on
Well,
wheels.
wait, go back to that for a second, and you'll notice
Yeah.
something. We have the look at the crappy old driver's seat laying on top of the SPMT.
Oh, that's right.
Now go to the next picture.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, the drivers just must not have had enough luxury.
Do you think that seatbelt actually works? Because then we can't do
Yes.
any more brake tests.
That's an actual truck seat, so that thing is air suspension. Yeah, no, we're not going to have any more Home Depot bucket tests.
Those were the best, where you saw like people flying across SPMTs as they hit the brakes, not
we
realizing.
We heard in back channels that they hit the button intentionally. They're just like going down the road, and they're just like, "Hey, I wonder what happens if we hit this button right now." And it's like the emergency stop button, and it literally just stops the whole SPMT, and they just rock forward and they fall over on the buckets because that's what they were riding on. Were
It's
buckets.
literally the best video you will ever see in life. That one and the transmission one of the truck. Those are the best.
Yeah, those guys were having some good fun, and they did it in the best timing possible, like right when we were looking. But yeah, they do have nice comfort now. I'm liking their style here.
But we still see them walking behind those SPMTs. Do you have the video? Is this the video?
The video's at the very end, I believe, of these, if I put it in right.
So I'm curious, in that video, we're going to see some stuff. What makes them spin like that?
Pulling
someone-
the cable off of them.
But literally a person pulling, right? Not like another.
No, a excavator. See that excavator right there? See the cable hook to it?
Yeah, I'm
They're
not
using
seeing
the
it all of a
excavator.
sudden.
The second one.
Right there. No,
You've
the
gone
video?
too far. No. We're looking at the excavator. We're looking at the cable connected to the excavator.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm just looking for the video because I wanted to get that
Yeah,
up.
so they've strapped the 3 cables together and they're pulling it with the bucket of the excavator.
That's not the usual union way of doing this, by the way.
Why? It seemed very efficient to me.
It's efficient. It's just not the way it's done normally.
Normally they go for non-efficient.
It's
Don't answer that, PK. Don't answer that.
Actually, this is actually a contractor. They're doing it their way, so I don't know.
it's the least expensive equipment usage way of doing it versus using the fancy heavy duty $200,000 cable puller.
I wonder if this is the initial pull that they're doing or what they're doing here.
They're pulling in all new cable. This is it.
But I wonder if they will cut off this end because it's kind of crimped a little bit right there.
Now,
Nah.
see, he's pulling it down, and they're pulling it out of the trench and stacking it on the side, so that once they get more of it up, then they'll pull it out and pull it further down the trench in the future.
It's just a stacked image that basically this is gravity pulling it down at this point.
Yep.
Okay.
And then those 3 guys pull it back out of the hole and pile it up on top of the pile up there.
And in the figure 8 pattern so that it doesn't basically coil up and get tangled.
Right, exactly.
Well, here's the video. Oh my gosh, that looks tiny. So this is while they're pulling it. That's what you wanted to see, Indian Star.
It is, yes.
Yep. Spools are just sitting on rollers, and when they tug, they spin.
Yeah, so far they were up to the lab cam position, right?
It just made it to the lab cam driveway.
Oh, by the way, we wanted to show these real quick. So this is their new homes that are basically at the that new streets like John Street, or at least that's what it was on paper. They might get to rename it as they're building the street, but that's the old one. And I think this is the first time we've really seen these kind of up close like this. It looks pretty nice. Yeah, there's nobody in them or visible in them. That's the main point of why these are taken. Uh, and it's just kind of a cool view of this area. So this is the back corner lot, basically next to the integration site or that integrations building. There used to be a large shrine. I think it was kind of like a Catholic version of a shrine, but it was sitting right in this area, if I remember correctly. And I think the new owners, basically being SpaceX, has removed it at this point. But they've got some cool artwork here with this. I'm pretty sure this was done by the local school. This is a community. It's really growing, and this is really neat to see that they've moved in that direction. Now let's go ahead and do the launch site. So got about say 45 minutes left here because we started about 15 minutes late.
I can hear everybody clapping and cheering, especially Astro Joe.
Wow.
Not in a bad way. They're
No,
just excited.
Well,
And
I
there's
can do the
Astro
one-hand
Joe
clap.
now. Look, it's Astro Joe right there. Go on, sorry, the one-handed clap.
One-handed clap.
Is that your fingers flopping to and fro?
Yeah. And I could do one-handed clap, which is just closing and opening my hand, and then there's the fast version that is just moving my arm like crazy to make that. But anyways, the
Okay,
one-handed
Chicken Wing,
clap
let's
is
talk
funner.
about. Okay, Chicken Wing, let's talk about launch site.
So before and after. So that's just another one of those comparisons that you can go through and see. There's a lot of changes here as well. It's moving day, but with dirt this time at the launch site.
Is there something happening on your computer? Because these pictures are very pixelated.
They've been all day.
Oh.
Ooh.
No,
Yeah,
There we go,
it's
that's
the
the one.
3 sec. It's the 3 second resolution problem. It hasn't changed since we started.
yeah. Actually, I'm wondering what server we're on now that I'm finally thinking about it. US South. Okay. Because if we're at a server in like Australia or something for Discord, it will.
And we blame Marcus House or Chrome Kiwi.
Marcus usually doesn't show up here at the first time, but Chrome Kiwi, he might. He's pretty good about that. But anyways, the news technology, we're going to change it over next week and try it out. See if we can get rid of that problem and make these images and basically the animations even better. So anyways, you can see they've got massive construction going on right in here. So they are removing parts of the pad. So they're basically using a jackhammer with this. It's almost like an excavator.
It's an
but
excavator. It's just got a jackhammer attachment on it.
Yeah, they're very useful. So the interesting part is if you look at where this is at and how far over it goes, it's kind of in alignment with these as far as these tanks. So we may or may not get the horizontal tanks, the hot dog style tanks, in right in this location prior to the next flight. It's one of those like flip of a coin. We're not sure until Elon says which way it is, because right now this system has been cleaned up, and they've patched the tank over here that was damaged. That was the LOX tank, and then they are doing the pieces over here. But one special element, Dave, if you want to call this out, what's going on with this guy?
So that's I think it's called continuous flight boring machine. It's the same exact system as we saw at Massey's, and they're drilling small but deep pilings to go in underneath whatever they're going to put in this pad they're preparing to work for. This one is, since the aerials on the ground photos, we can see that it's assembled and is already drilling holes.
Yeah, I think those were shown in the ground photos. Let me skip right to
Yeah,
the
it's
end.
definitely it's a ground photo.
Oh, there's a couple other pictures that I didn't see that I needed to move around. There's that trenching we were talking about earlier. Mauricio got a quick look at that. Okay, so I think it's up here towards the top, or maybe closer to the middle. Okay, it must have been at the beginning because there it is. So this is what I was looking for. Is this? You can see it's behind the wall. It's already set up with the full drill rig. And the other really interesting part is, oh, it's not this photo. I guess it's the other photo next to it somewhere. Because you should be able to see the top as well.
I think there's one much later on.
Yeah, the pictures were all out of order yesterday. Here it is. This is the one. So you can see that it's all the way down to this point. So it should be up to about in here for this mechanism going up and down. So they're already appearing to be drilling.
Yep.
So that's another good news, that they are moving very quickly. So Philokid, you had an opinion about this that was interesting about why they're moving so quickly at the build site or the launch site here.
You're going to have to refresh my mind. I don't remember.
So you, I think, were stating that the entire launch site was going through this massive change, but it was pre-planned prior to the flight.
Yeah, I'm thinking that because of the quickness of them doing the setup and all these subcontractors arriving on site here, that this was probably planned probably 3-4 months ago, and everything was pre-staged, ready to come in after the flight, and the flight did so much more damage that it they were able to get they were probably slow getting in here because they had to clear the damage out before they could set up all their equipment. But I think that everything, you just don't schedule this equipment overnight and have it show up like this.
Except for the scaffolding guys, those guys seem to be like drop of a dime, they're there. Maybe they're pre-scheduled, but they are very quick.
Yeah, and the scaffolding's really not involved with any of the foundation work for the most part. That's separate. That's SpaceX operations.
But yeah, I just say those are the only ones I've seen that just suddenly appear, and I'm like, well, that was fast.
Yeah, I mean, these guys are the heavy construction teams and usually need a fair amount of time to make sure that all their various gear is not on another job when you need them.
Yeah, speaking of... Oh, go ahead.
And there are 3 separate drilling rigs, and there are 3 separate contractors.
I think both OLM are from one contractor, and then the tank farm is a completely different contractor.
There's at least 2 for sure.
Yeah, so there's this one, and this one, as far as the 3 drill rigs. These 2 seem to be together, as you said. This one seems to be separate. They're not really playing with each other as far as the game goes. It's just, we're doing our job, they're doing their job. They're not interfering, and that's the best part about this, is that it's moving so quickly. And I was going to say that speaking of how like quick things are moving and slow in a sense, they are removing the elevator. So these are the elevator segments right here. This is the elevator that was on Sunday, the 16th of April, that it basically broke free on the counterweight, came screaming down the tower and collapsed right into the floor. That was the scariest thing I think I've seen in quite a while at SpaceX. Luckily, nobody was harmed. Nobody was there. So Everybody was looking around like, what was that? And then they investigated, and there was no, vehicles that came for ambulances or anything along those lines. It was pretty much just we checked. There's no other structural damage or damage to anybody else. So they went ahead and attempted to launch the next day on the 17th. That was the Monday, and that just became a wet dress rehearsal. 3 days later, they did the launch, and luckily there was no pipes or anything else that seemed to be damaged by the cables or any of the counterweight on that elevator. But going ahead, we did see on the ground shots. I'm going to have to go back to the bottom again here. There was a little bit of the pictures here that showed, you can see the elevator is that piece right in there up to this point, and then it ends up a little bit further. So it's not completely removed, but it's still coming down slowly. We even saw that they're using ratchets to do that. So it's just very manual process, very slow. I kind of expect what's going on was that the contractor was hired to install and maintain it. There should be no way that had come apart the way that it did if it was being properly maintained. But yeah, you can see that it's completely removed along in here on that elevator section, and then you can see this is the top of it here. But this is also a very corrosive environment. I've got a tool bag here for unbolting stuff so nothing falls and hurts anybody down below.
But that indicates they're still continuing to remove the mast.
Yeah. To answer the question that will come up inevitably is like, how do they get up here? They can use boom lifts up to a point, but then they use basically a ladder along the inner side of this column right here, I believe. You can't see it, but it would basically be on the inside and go up pretty much the whole length of the entire thing in case the elevator goes out. It's
so you spend half of your shift climbing to the top and the other half climbing back down, and you get 5 minutes to work.
Something like that. I mean, you're gonna have to tie off into certain places just to rest, with your feet basically on these pieces or on the ladder itself. But yeah, that's not a job that I would like. It's not the heights that scares me. It's just the amount of time just to get very little done. It's really kind of a.
Well, remember, they're using the man lift to get them up to the QD arm level.
Yeah, they can get up to a certain point. Sorry, where am I? I was going to look at this other shot just to kind of show where the QD arm is in relation to everything else. The elevator, you could kind of see it still in here, but it's kind of obscured by everything else in there.
Yeah, it's 3 levels below the QD at this point, based on the ground shots.
Yeah, but they had to go all the way up to pretty much the top up here because that's where the elevator went. So they've been slowly been removing all those segments, and that's where they are sitting right now. All right, so let's go ahead and talk about the other elephant in the room here for movements of dirt and material underneath the launch table. It's looking pretty good. They've got lots of cribbing and mat cribbing, and then they've stacked it on top of each other like a Jenga set right here, just so that they can get in and drill in between the holes. So they used to have like 26 piles in here, something like that. They're kind of like friction piles. Zach did a really good video on this, talking about a couple of different issues. So the piles may have collapsed on themselves. The soil itself may have collapsed with it. So that's the initial part of the issue, is that the soil itself is basically just like a sand. It's very compressible if you liquefy it. So liquefaction is the process where you have a little bit of moisture and water, and the soil itself basically becomes unbound and reduces the amount of friction, and you can essentially compress it a lot further than you would normally be able to. And stuff might start squaring out the sides if you're pressing down on it just in the right way. He also talked about the edges. There's certain edges that were not quite supported well enough, or at least according to the shots we had at the time. But right now they do have piles, or the piles that are being done right here. So how are they going about doing this particular element, Filikin?
Well, what they're doing is they're drilling down and then setting those sleeves in the top, and then they keep drilling down and lifting it up, and then once they get down to their desired depth, they're filling the holes with mud that then stabilizes the walls, and then they take those yellow tubes that are on the right hand side. Go back.
See if I can grab the full view of all of this real quick. This is probably the best one to show everything here. And oh, that's the mud, but I don't want that. Okay, here we go. So here's the sleeves.
And you can see that upper left hole has water in it, and it's actually probably mud. And then they take those yellow and black and green and those sleeves, stick them down in the hole, and then they pump concrete down all the way to the bottom of the hole and lift those things up and pump the mud out of the caisson as they're filling it with concrete. So the mud floats on top of the concrete. They pump it out, put it back in the storage container, and they fill the tube up with concrete as it's rising.
Speaking of pumps, they've got these two that you're talking about here, and these red lines. And then this blue line is the water line, and they've got these other ones getting set up for additional mud over on this side. And I actually didn't see this one until just a moment ago, but there's another one right here. So they've got one on the inside already in the legs being set up. And then the mud is being done over here. So these are wastewater tanks, or frac tanks, as you'd call them. There's one that's water. That's that black line. That's the blue one.
The yellow tank is a mud separator, so that actually is the mud mix mud separator tank. That's not a storage tank.
Aren't these two the storage tanks?
The red ones are storage. The yellow one is mud.
Yeah, you can see it's literally separated out mud here.
Well, they separate out the rock from the mud when it's pumped out of the hole, and that's what being dumped off to the side, and they recirculate the mud, and the rocks get dumped. Very standard oil well processing.
Basically, they're looking for the right type of mix for their slurry. Obviously, large rocks don't work out, and if it's too dry or too wet, you want to get it down.
But what you're looking at right where your cursor is, that's actually a spoils pile. So all of the rock and junk that they're pulling out of the hole comes up with the mud, gets pumped over here, gets screen separated, and then dumped out of the separator. That's the whole purpose of the yellow tank, is to separate the drilling remnants from the circulating mud.
And just to clarify, these are the water tanks you can see here going through. This is the black line that goes into blue over here. But yeah, that's just a really kind of cool part of the process. You literally have these systems, and they've got I thought there was going to be pumps that would be visible. Oh, there's one right there. So there's a water pump.
Yeah,
and then these two pumps.
Yep.
And then you've got pumps over here as well. There's a lot of friction in these lines, I expect, to need this many pumps.
Well, I think the pumps there are probably trash pumps for keeping the area dry around the work site, not part of the drilling operation.
Well, this one's hooked directly into the red line for the mud. So I'm wondering if it's also pulling the mud up this way and going back that way. But yeah, that's really a cool system they have here. And it makes sense that you'd pressurize it from the right going left and then left going right in order to move the materials. Because otherwise you're trying to pull on it, and these aren't rigid pipes.
Now, the interesting comment I had this morning about the number of caissons and what have you are going in Is the new engine bar pressure going to exert more pressure on these caissons? Obviously, it will. Are they designed to handle the additional loading?
That's a really great question. Is they have to be very forward thinking on all of this, because right now they're at 800 or 8,877 metric tons if they make a consistent burn of 269 metric tons of thrust. And their end goal was 300 tons back in 2016. So if they're still aiming for that goal, we're looking at, what was that? 9,900 metric tons of thrust, plus or minus depending on how many engines go out or what level of thrust you have. But that's going to be a lot, and I think that's why they originally were looking at 29 engines as well. So I think they've increased their engines to decrease the amount of thrust they need on them, but still, at that general idea, if they're going to keep it at between 88 or 8,800 or 9,900, basically, um, there's a lot of pressure being built up here, a lot of heat that you're going to have to remove, a lot of vibration. I mean, they're building the caissons outside of this area as well. So you've got these two for this leg, and I'm going to assume there's one right here. I know that, but I'm going to assume that there's going to be one right here, and it's going to continue around two for each leg, and then a whole lot of them inside of here. So I'm going to assume that it's going to be a very strong structure. And Dave, you talked about a cap. You want to go into that a little bit?
I'd let Philly do that, but yeah, I was talking about, so you do piles like this, you pour a concrete structure above the tops of them to tie them all together. It's called a pile cap, and that's what actually you build on top of.
And this pile cap, Philly, would it look a lot like what we saw for rebar and other things like we've seen for Mega Bay?
It will. And remember when they did the piles on top, or for the OLIT, there were 25 of them. And then there was like an 8-foot thick concrete and rebar cap put on top of all the 25 piles that created the foundation for the OLIT. I imagine we're going to see something very similar to that here. The question will be, how thick is it going to be? And to me, the thicker the better. And just because we see the tops of these rings here, they're probably going to be pulled up, and the actual concrete and rebar is down at a lower level. So I think we're going to see additional modifications to the dirt so that we end up with a thick cap on top of all these piles, just like on the OLIT and or the foundation on the new Mega Bay.
Yeah, I was actually looking up some of the kind of the rebar and basically how the concrete will work with these columns. There was issues with if it was too far up with the concrete. They actually have machines to basically cut off the top of that concrete, keep the rebar, and it just pulls off the top of that concrete little bits at a time. And so it keeps the structural integrity pretty much intact. And that was a really cool, like, oh, there's a fix for that if you ever go too far up. So thinking about this is a lot kind of like the whole idea of where they buried it at Massey's. So you'll have rebar sticking up out of the ground or just below the ground while they're still working, and then they'll unbury it all and access the rebar and add the concrete to it once they're ready.
Yeah, exactly. And the pad under here is going to be very thick. I mean, we know there was 2.5, 3 feet of concrete here that got blown away with the first launch. So that concrete's going to be much thicker and have much more steel in it. And I wouldn't be surprised to see 8-foot, 10-foot thick foundation pile cap on top of these piles.
I think with the entire thickness of the current or the previous concrete was about 4 to 6 feet. So it was still pretty thick, but it didn't have enough foundation. It didn't have enough rebar in a lot of places that was needed.
I think it was only that deep on the compression ring itself. In the center, I don't think it was that thick.
I'm talking about total from the center down to the sides as well. So you can look at the old photos and get some measurements off of those, and it's about that. I haven't measured it in a little bit, but that's going to be the general approximate number. And they actually did add a little bit of height to the underneath the orbital launch mount, maybe 6 inches.
Well, we know it wasn't sufficient, so it's going
Yeah.
to be thicker than that.
Yeah. 10 feet, 20 feet, whatever it takes. They're not going to go for 20, but whatever it takes to make this happen properly.
Well, the other thing is, even with the new thrust, I mean, if it's going to be, even though there's more thrust, there's going to be less force because over time, because if it jumps up quicker, there will be less continuous force on the pad too.
Yeah, I'm just looking at that like number again, 888 or 800, no, 8,877 metric tons of force. I mean, 1.7 thrust to weight ratio, and that's if you're really bulking this vehicle out with fuel and everything from payloads as well. It's just insane. So, looking at this as well, this is going to be part of what's going inside of these holes. They've got a really cool system of how they're setting it all up. We've seen that they will basically lift these up on the jigs. There's basically a what is it called? Chain hoist that lifts up the rebar sections on two sides. And then they basically put that spiral ring just going across the entire thing. And then they will essentially just make the rings in place. And then these are the rings that they're making right now. And they are about 100 feet ish is what I got. So you can use a 40-foot shipping container right here. You get up to about here and on this side, and then about to here for the other, and then the rest of it's about that 20 feet. So about 100 feet is what I was measuring based off the launch table before, but this is a better view. But that's quite deep. I remember the original pad itself was around 140 feet, if I remember correctly, for the columns.
Yeah, 120 to 140. That's kind of our thinking. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll have to go back and
that was before we were flying too much every week.
Yeah, that was back in the days when we didn't even know what kind of table that they wanted, and all they knew is they wanted legs going up at an angle, and it turns out they were not in the right position either. Like 39A, the legs are about 2 feet out further than it is here. As far as the diameter, that was just one of those little things because these ones stick inside the table slightly, or basically in the blast zone. So they had to go through and shield it. It's very interesting stuff. Plenty more rebar where that came from for all of the construction they're doing over here, or maybe that's for the pad that's lower down. But you can see that they have been starting to bring in over from the suborbital side of the site all of the compressed gas canisters. So these are going to be like 300 or 200 bar, which is just like 3,000 to 4,000 psi in pressure for gaseous nitrogen tanks that will basically be for their water deluge system. That's basically their pumps. I don't expect we'll have really any pumps except for bringing water into the tanks. Other than that, it's just going to be compressed gas to push it all out going through this one pipe. And then they've got to have some sort of manifold, which we don't know where that's at. It could be still in the GSE building, which is what we heard as the rumor where it went. I think that was from Anthony. We still need to talk to him and ask him directly if that was him, or if we're getting like a rumor of a rumor from somebody that made something up. But anyways, this is probably a 2-stage system. So you have this as your first stage. Basically, that's your shower head from below. And then this one will probably be for up here. That's kind of what we're still expecting. We haven't seen too much evidence of that yet, but that's what you would do with a 2-stage system is at liftoff, that second stage would open up on that manifold and water would start squirting out inwards into this area of the launch ring and maybe even go through These steel plates up here, the burn plates, you could basically run water through them. I know that Chrome Kiwi had a design that it goes like water in and then goes around and water out, but that creates uneven heating. The other side of it was the idea of just putting holes inside of these. So it will act as a shower head above a shower head. So the shower head down here points up, the shower head up here points up, protects the steel plate from basically thermal management issues, as well as creating a bit of a secondary water deluge system. And that's really useful to reduce the amount of vibration and noise and everything else. Let's move on to some other photos here because we've got about 10 minutes left and we've got other questions and donations we should go through. If you've got those prepared, you can do that now, or I can just point out some other little things, and I think we should wrap it up there.
I've got one more question, one more donation from John Dopker for $10.
Thank you, John. Anybody else or any new members?
Have not seen new members for a while. We've got a couple questions. Senti was asking, do you think they're going to put a ring of pure pylon things around the OLM? Yep.
Yep, all around here. So 2 here, 2 here, 2 here, maybe even more than 2. The idea that they could put even a third one in between over here is not beyond expectation. They're doing a lot of beefing up of this. One thing I would expect as well is we've seen this elsewhere. They'll go through, fill it in, do concrete, let it cure, and then they'll come in and do another pile nearby it at times to just make the whole thing work. But in this case, they are a good distance apart. So I don't know. Any other questions from Senti or anybody else? Otherwise, we can get back into some other interesting details.
That's all for the launch site. We had a question about could they put enough solar panels on site to not need commercial power?
A simple answer to that is no, but they could reduce their power consumption so that they are not using so much from the grid as much as possible, but still they use a lot. For instance, we know that the pumps here, as well as everything else, will use these. There's actually another one over here you can't see, but these generators here, which are about 5 megawatts. That's going to be a lot of solar panels. I'd have to look up how many that would be as far as square footage, but that's still going to be quite a bit. And you'd have to have a whole battery backup system, which Tesla does, and SpaceX works with Tesla. And they already have a battery backup system, but it's not nearly enough for all of their needs so far. Okay, so a couple other little things to notice and point out is they are getting this ready for form work, or actually that is the form work, and it's basically being back braced. So they're going to pour concrete most likely in this area. They might have another piece of form work in between, so it's just a wall, kind of like how this is a wall, or they might just fill this entire area in. And the idea would be in order to reduce vibration if you're filling this whole area in. But last call on questions. So exclamation mark questions if you have questions, so we can go through and get those in the last 5 minutes here.
Well, we got Chrome Kiwi and Jim Cabot have each gifted one more RGV aerial membership to the team.
Woohoo! Thank you, guys. It's so amazing every time you guys give out those memberships, because 2 things happens. One, people get to go through and get all of the ground photography with those memberships, I believe, right? Because that's part of the membership. So that's 480 photos or 450 photos?
453.
453, yeah, for the ground photos, and then all the flyover pictures for this week.
151. 161, excuse me.
Yeah, I don't know what tier level those are for the donations for those.
Everybody gets the ground photos. The ones that are tiered are the flyover ones.
So it's tiered usually 1 through 5 or something, but even the ground photos, you get at least 15 on tier 1. And I'm sorry,
You get all the ground photos in every tier.
Sorry, I meant the flyover. There's 15 on tier 1. It's really impressive every time I've seen that. Mauricio goes through and he finds photos that are for every site, sometimes like doubled up on the site, one zoomed in for certain locations. He's really good about picking those out and making those very useful for everybody. Okay, so other little pieces to go over last minutes. We do have concrete being done here. This is finally getting capped off. So they just need these 2 little sections. They've already done the concrete just above that. Let me see if I can find a better view here. Perfect. So they've already done the concrete all along in here. So the berms at pad A and B is almost done. It's just that little bit.
One more day.
Yeah, one more day of concrete work here, and they will be done with this berm, unless they decide to do a little bit more in there, but that's not much. And then
Okay, I got a good question for you here, Thomas.
Oh, perfect.
Hoofy is asking, how can those 4 tanks be enough for such a, quote, large deluge system, unquote?
So deluge system, by definition, like you could basically throw a squirt gun at it, and it's like, yes, it kind of acts like a deluge system, but not really, by definition. But this would be enough for what, maybe 5 seconds, 10 seconds worth of.
The real trick is it's a lot of water, but not very long.
Yeah. So you really do it at startup. Right before startup, you basically start up that deluge system, and as it's going, it's ramping up. And the idea of a manifold is that it's supposed to actually open up the valves in series, so that it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and that way it's not all the water all at once with all that pressure, because otherwise you create water hammer. So you want to basically slowly fill up the lines with the first one. So the first one gets opened, they have a little bit of water coming through, and then they will start letting it rip for each one. So it's within a second or so, or a few seconds or so. They will open up each of those valves, and it basically starts spitting out the water. And that's going to be for, again, 5-10 seconds at most.
And you also have all the volume of the pipe, the water in the pipes.
Yep. And all of it is just basically back pressure from currently what appears just to be pipes like these. So are the compressed gas cylinders here. That's 300 bar, which would be about 4,000 psi. It's a lot of pressure. And technically the pressure you need for this area, let's say if you just took a 9-meter diameter circle with the current thrust, not the current, the previous thrust of the Raptors, we were looking at, for 7,500 metric tons of thrust in that area, it would be about 160 psi. It's not a whole lot of pressure. So you can put a lot of pressure through this, and you're not having many issues here. The holes that you would have would be that 5-foot diameter, most likely, on this side, or something similar to that, because that's basically what your pipe is allowing for flow. And you're talking about 14 square feet of holes in total diameter, or less, or more or less, I guess you could say. And that's going to be what your water will be coming out. It's not going to be a lot of holes. I think it's going to be either larger holes or just a lot of smaller ones. So fewer large ones, or a lot of small ones, just depending on how you want to set this up. I do hope eventually they put in a large water tank still right in this section, because what that would do is allow your water deluge system to run longer. And you could basically go through and have your rapid cadence of, we launch the rockets come back down. And if you're going to use the table for a water deluge system, you can use it to help protect the ground infrastructure. Instead of landing in this area and replacing this every month or so, you just use the launch table again. So that's a further, reuse stage of things. Well, I think unless we have any last minute questions or donations, I think we should wrap up now.
I think that's the majority of it. Yeah, I think we're running up on the end of time here.
That's a great idea, Thomas.
Yeah, we're really at the last seconds here. So I'll go ahead and to sign off. So thank you for having me again. It was fun driving. I'm sad Zach wasn't able to join us today. He did have some computer issues, so good luck with that for him. Hope to see him next week.
Well, and he may be starting a GoFundMe because he's going to have to get a new laptop, and the laptop he needs is he's going to need a GoFundMe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It sounded like it. Not only the hard drive just died, the motherboard died. The
Well,
whole
the
thing is
motherboard
pretty much.
stopped talking to both of his hard drives, and that happened last night. First, it was talking to one at least, and then as of last night, it stopped talking to both. So it's a goner.
Oh, that's unfortunate. So, fingers crossed with the GoFundMe with Zach for that.
And if you have the time and can donate, I know Zach would appreciate it, and so would we.
Yeah, keep your eyes open. He's definitely thinking about doing that. Yeah, he needs for all his video editing, he needs a powerhouse.
That's why he's got us, Dave. Just kidding.
Yeah, it's a good reminder to send in for that. So, Godspeed for Zach on that. And with that, I'll pass it off to Dave.
And I want to thank everybody for having been here for another interesting week of Starbase activities. I know Mauricio is trying to get up in the middle of next week for another flight, depending on the weather. As is obvious from the tornadoes and other things happening at Starbase last night and the last couple of days, weather has been a real problem for getting up into the air and taking aerial photos. So everybody say a short prayer for the weather gods and see if we can get some great shots next week. And with that, I will pass it to Indy.
You want to pass it to PK?
I will pass it to PK. That's correct. How about that?
Okay, have a good week, everybody. Thank you for coming, and make sure you hit like on your way out. We would appreciate it. And you all have a good week, and thanks for the opportunity to discuss the Starbase with you.
Hey, PK and Dave, we want to thank you guys for joining us today. It is so much better when you guys are around, so thank you. And I'm just the bookend. I started and I finish it. But I did want to say main engine cutoff.
And then start. I'm back.
Oh,
Go
ahead, Mauricio.
I want to say thanks to everybody that joined us today. And I wasn't around for a little bit because I've been doing something on the background here, and I guess I might as well say it. Just be on the lookout on the next couple of days. Hopefully, we're a little bit behind on this new project we're starting, but we will be putting out narrated videos for the Flyovers. Maybe about 10-minute videos, just kind of recapping what was covered, or just doing it's our first one, so we really don't know what direction we're going to take, but turn on the notifications and just keep an eye on our Twitter in the next couple of days, either Sunday or Monday, when we'll be putting this video out. So yeah, wish us luck. And one last thing is, we do have a flyover scheduled for Monday at 1 p.m. and another at backup dates Saturday and Sunday of this coming week. So just hopefully, like Dave said, hopefully the weather cooperates. Not really sure how it looks like on Monday though, but we'll wish for the best. And that's it for me. Thank you very much for watching, and passing it back to Indian Star.
And do you want to tell them about the stream next weekend?
Oh yes, might as well say the stream will be scheduled on Sunday because of the flyover situation and other factors. So it will be on Sunday at 12 p.m. CST. So we'll make sure to put it out there and give everybody good heads up on Twitter and all that. So.
And now back to me. Happy Mother's Day to everybody. Main engine cut off. Stage separation confirmed. Love you. Bye.